Good evening. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Brookline Select Board for 5 p.m. on Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. Once again, so I'm Chaz Carey, I'm the town administrator, and once again, I have the privilege to briefly serve as chair pro tem of this meeting, the board's first meeting after the town election. I'd first like to call the meeting to order and direct your attention to the results of the election, which will be presented to us by Town Clerk Ben Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brookline held its annual town election on May 7th, 2024. The polls were open from 7 a.m. until 8 o'clock p.m. on that day, as well as early voting and vote by mail, which occurred in the weeks leading up to it. Turnout for the election was 9,845 voters, 24.94% turnout, which marks the highest turnout at a town election that did not have an override on the ballot in at least 25 years. Of those voters, 5,279 of them voted early or by mail, over 50%, and 1,000 of them used our ballot drop boxes in order to return their ballots, proving success in that new program that we introduced this past year. A tremendous amount of thanks is owed to town employees from every department who helped with everything from preparing ballot mailings, setting up polling locations, serving as police details to protect our elections, and helping to get the final results at the end of the night. There's also a thank you owed to departments and organizations who gave us their space to host polling locations and early voting locations throughout the election, as well as a thank you to our poll workers who spent 16 hours at the polls on election day to make sure that we had a successful election. I also want to give a very special thank you to my staff in the town clerk's office. Because I was in fact on the ballot, there were many elections activities I could not participate in. Therefore, members of my staff went above and beyond the regular responsibilities in an election to make sure that we had a successful and joyous day here in Brookline, and they deserve all of our thanks. The results of the election are as follows. For the position of town moderator, Neil Allen Wyszynski. For the position of town clerk, Ben Kaufman. For the position of select board, Bernard Green and David Arenas Perlman. For the position trustee of the public library, Judith Goldman, Kristen Hung, Carol Lowy, and Sasan Zelka. For the position of school committee, Jesse Hefter, Sarah Ann Mogtatter, and Carolyn Thal. And for the position of housing authority, Kimberly Richardson. There were also a large number of town meeting members who were elected. I will not go through all of those right now, but the official results were certified by the registrars of voters at a meeting on Friday, May 10th, and those official results are posted on the town website under our election results page. Does the board have any questions about the election itself? Well, if the chair will allow, I also do want to do a quick note on the side, which is actually to commemorate an upcoming anniversary we have in Brookline. This Friday, May 17th, marks 20 years since same-sex marriage was legalized in Massachusetts, the first place it was legalized in the United States. In Brookline, on May 17th, 2004, one of the first same-sex marriages was performed in the town clerk's office by then town clerk Pat Ward. While it has not been substantiated, it is believed by many it was actually the second same-sex marriage ever performed in the United States. The moment was memorialized in an article in the Washington Post, and I would encourage you to all go and look at it. On that historic day, 76 same-sex couples filed marriage intentions in the town clerk's office, and by the end of 2004, 187 marriage licenses had been issued to same-sex couples here in Brookline. We look forward to remembering that historic day 20 years ago and observing the advancements that we have made, as well as the small role the Brookline Town Clerk's Office has played in that important day. So with that, I will say, while we had a very successful election in May, our work is truly never done. The whiteboard in my office already has the countdown 112 days until September 3rd. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. With the election results in order and certified, I will direct your attention to the first item on the agenda, which calls for the board to organize with the election of a chair. I will note that I read from a script that was prepared by the first town administrator in the modern era, Dick Leary. This has been passed down from town administrator to town administrator. So it's a nice little tradition to just continue. I read from these cards, Mel read from them, Rich Kelleher read from them, and Dick wrote them. So it's a very nice little tradition here. We will now proceed with the election of a chair. Nominations are in order and no seconds are required. Do we have nominations? Mr. Warren.
Yep, I'd like to nominate Bernard Green to be chair.
Doesn't need to be second. Are there any other nominations? There being none, is there a motion that nominations be called? All right. I will take a vote on the motion that nominations be closed. Sorry, called, not closed. The motion was made by Mr. Sandman. Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Mr. Sandman,
Aye.
Mr. Warren,
Aye.
Mr. Perlman.
Aye.
All right, 5-0. It has been moved, so the nominations are closed. It has been moved that Bernard Green be elected chair of the board for the ensuing year. Those in favor of the motion will say aye or yes. Those opposed, no. Mr. Green,
Aye, this time.
Mr. Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Mr. Sandman,
Aye.
Mr. Warren,
Aye.
Mr. Perlman.
Aye.
The motion is carried by a vote of 5-0. I am pleased to announce that the Bernard Green has been elected chair of the select board for the ensuing year and will now take the ceremonial chair. My job is done.
Thank you. So we still have to nominate a vice chair of the board. I think you do those honors too.
I'm happy to do that. Our nominations are in order for a vice chair.
Yes.
And
I nominate, yes, well, you can. if you
Yeah,
want.
sure. Nominate John Van Scoyac.
very well. Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion that nominations be closed?
So moved.
All right, all in favor, Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Mr. Sandman,
Aye.
Mr. Warren,
Aye.
Mr. Perlman.
Aye.
Nominations now closed. We have one nomination for John Van Scoyac to serve as vice chair for the ensuing year. All in favor, aye or yes. All opposed, no. Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Mr. Sandman,
Aye.
Mr. Warren,
Aye.
Mr. Perlman.
Aye.
John Van Scoyac, by a vote of 5-0, has been elected vice chair for the ensuing year. Congratulations. Now I'm really done.
Okay. And I am that Bernard Green that was just selected as chair of the select board. Before we start, I'd like to just thank the community for support during the election campaign, the long election campaign, and both for their support and their ideas and complaints that I heard about things that we should be doing differently in town or better. Take those up as we go through the year. We don't have a magic wand, right? And there's no money tree that we can solve all our problems with, but we will make the effort to respond to the concerns that I learned in the community. I think David also, and that we hear every day in emails and phone calls from people in the community. So again, thank you. And we'll move on and proceed as well as we did before. Okay. Okay. Let's start off with announcements or updates or other announcements and updates from the select board. Any?
I have something I'd like to.
Yes, Mike.
Last week, John Van Scoyac, fresh back from his trip to Egypt, and I attended the graduation from the Joint Fire Academy held by Cambridge and Brookline Fire Departments. And 8 new firefighters will be joining the Brookline force, and it was a very impressive ceremony. I think both of us were very, very, very moved by it. Families were there and so forth, and Chief John Sullivan made a very graceful little speech, and wanted to publicly welcome those 8 new firefighters.
Thank you. Any other? John?
Yes, it feels good to be back, and I want to congratulate our chair on his reelection. I want to congratulate David Perlman on his election. Welcome to the select board.
Thank you very much.
And I hope they make sure to feed you as they feed the rest of us when we have these meetings that start at 5 o'clock. By the way, ordering from the spa, you'll be perfectly content with what you get. I just want to mention that there is kind of an important meeting coming up this week. There is an ongoing process by which we're going to update our open space plan. And one of the forums that is being held on that subject is this coming Thursday at 7 o'clock at what's known as the Municipal Service Center, which is the building that is behind the fire station in Precinct 15. And I hope I got that right, but I think I did. We're not talking about the police community
No.
community room. It's the Municipal Service Center. So that would be an important meeting to attend. I hope people sort of check out the details of that meeting on the town website. I also want to make known, if it isn't already known to people, that our annual report, the town of Brookline's annual report, has been published. And notably, it is edited by our new communications official, Christina Metcalf. And I, for one, think it's a terrific example of how that report is going to just get better and better as we go forward year after year. It's an important report that helps people to understand exactly what they get for their tax dollars and for their participation in our local government and for their very wise decision to become part of this community. And I hope people will go to the town website, look for the page with the annual town report. It's really well worth going through.
Thank you. Any other comments or updates? Yeah, Mike.
So I have one, in the miscellaneous agenda, the things that we approve by consent. There is a grant of $750,000, $250,000 per year to support the Division of Sustainability and Natural Resources and the establishment of a special grant account into which funds can be deposited for sustainability and environmental goals being administered through the Department of Public Works. That comes from a family office, which means that they represent some family that has substantial assets, and that family has apparently directed them to make that contribution. And I think it's buried in a long list of things. I think it's worthy of
Yeah,
mention.
we has mention that.
A request was made actually to take that out of the miscellaneous agenda
Ah.
and discuss it. So we will do that.
Okay, good.
And I just wanted to say on the subject of the Department of Public Works, next Tuesday is DPW Day at the Municipal Service Center. All day, it'll be open to the public. The public hours are on the website. In addition, there'll be visits from several of the third grade classes. It's one of my favorite days of the year. I always love seeing kids and members of the public. You can touch a truck. You can figure out how the gardening works. You can look at the giant sewer camera tanker we have. It's really cool. Strongly recommend. You can see welding and street signs. It's a lot of fun, and it's really great tribute to our DPW staff who do really wonderful work that often goes unseen in the community. So please come by the Municipal Service Center next Tuesday and look online for specific dates and times.
And even grown-ups can enjoy climbing up into those trucks. Okay, next we have, unless anyone else has a comment, public comment. Charlie, please lay out the rules so we can start public comment.
Happy to do it. So thank you for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Once 15 minutes has been met, there's an opportunity at the conclusion of the Select Board's business for additional comments.
Nice.
Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you are welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. And so just so folks know, we have 3 people signed up in advance for public comment. So folks can sign up in advance, but in the meantime, if anyone would like to speak, they may raise their hand on Zoom or in person, or use the Q&A feature on Zoom to let us know they'd like to make a comment. So the first person signed up for public comment is Marissa Vogt. I'm promoting Marissa now.
Hi, can I talk now? Is
You
that
may.
Yep.
okay? Sorry, I missed a bit of what you said while I was being promoted to panelist. But hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Vogt. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 6, and I'm also a library trustee. We have a meeting tonight, so I wanted to briefly address you on the proposed records retention policy, which I know you're taking up later, but I'll be in a meeting, so thank you for giving me some time now. I want to just very briefly first disclose that my husband works for a large tech company that does offer email services to both profit and nonprofit organizations. But I'm not going to really touch on that specifically. I want to thank you for your responsiveness to the issue of public records retention and for your hard work on this. I just want to say, though, that I think that the proposed policy still falls short in many ways. I think it over relies on having individual board members keep track of their own records and forward messages to that board archives email address. I think using lists or town-owned accounts would help create archives for each board. That would really help with institutional memory. If new members were added, they could access the archives. I think this policy doesn't solve the issue that a records request could still cost a large amount of time and effort and money for the requester if it was difficult to disentangle emails from public records from a personal email account. And then also this records policy doesn't seem like it's really scalable, that it could be applied to non-select board committees like town meeting members in the AAC. So, I really do appreciate your responsiveness to this issue and your hard work so far. And I am very mindful of the phrase, that you don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But also, I think that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. And I would encourage you to continue to work on this because I think the policy as proposed just falls a little bit short. But again, really, I thank you for your hard work. I know you've got a lot of other things on your plate. So thanks. Have a good night.
The next person signed up for public comment is Alex Neary. Alex, if you are in the room, you may approach the presentation station and your 3 minutes will begin.
He's not in the room.
Okay, I'm not seeing Alex online either, so I'm going to go to the next person signed up for public comment, who is Raul Fernandez. Raul, if you're in person, you may approach the presentation station and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. Hello, board members. Good evening. My name is Dr. Raul Fernandez. I'm the Executive Director of Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity, also known as Bridge. Just want to congratulate Bernard, we were talking about earlier, your fourth now term on select board and re-election as chair as well. And to David on your election. Congratulations to you both and good luck. Last night, Bridge hosted an event called Race and Policy in Brookline, where we released the findings of our inaugural community survey in partnership with the Massing Polling Group. Unlike many community surveys, Brookline residents were randomly selected to participate, and the data was weighted to match the race, age, gender, education, and geography of Brookline, yielding generalizable results with a 5.1% margin of error. And the data were clear. Brookline residents are sounding the alarm about the affordability crisis in our community, especially as it relates to the cost of housing and childcare. 68% of respondents and majorities of every cross-section of Brookline, residents of all races, ages, and genders, owners as well as renters, regardless of education or income level, said, yes, it's getting harder for me to afford to live in Brookline. This affordability crisis disproportionately impacts residents of color. Some examples. The median income for Black households in Brookline is $47,000 less than white households. Unemployment rates for Latina residents are nearly double those of white residents. And for all the homes owned in Brookline, just 1% have a Black head of household. Considering these stats, it's not surprising that according to the Brookline Foundation's recent Understanding Brookline report, the percentage of people who identify as Black in Brookline has dropped, falling from just 3.4% in 2010 to a mere 2.5% in 2020. Back to the survey. Naturally, housing emerged as the top issue, with 65% of respondents saying affordable housing would be the most impactful economically, including 82% supporting income-restricted housing and 74% supporting high-density housing. A strong majority, 63% of respondents, indicated support for rent control, including 87% of renters and 89% of Black and Latino respondents. A majority of respondents said that racism is at least somewhat a serious problem in Brookline, including 68% of women and 70% of Black and Latino residents. Local government leaders, you all, were viewed most unfavorably in addressing racial disparities, with 28% of Asian residents and 25% of Black residents saying local leaders are doing poorly at working to address racial disparities.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Large majorities strongly support shifting resources and increasing taxes to make housing more affordable, address food insecurity, and expand childcare options, indicating widespread support to reallocate municipal budgets and raise revenues to address these needs. I sent you a link to all of these data. I encourage you to check them out, and please let me know if you have questions. My hope is that you'll join Brookline residents and Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity in putting affordability at the top of your agenda this year, especially as it relates
time
to
has
eliminating,
expired.
persisting racial inequities in our town. We're happy to partner with you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to our next section of the agenda, which is our miscellaneous agenda. I move approval of meeting minutes from April 2nd, 2024, April 24, 2024, and April 30, 2024. Unless anyone has any edits or corrections to those minutes. I actually sent in a correction, a little edit that wasn't substantial, but John.
I just want to note that I was not present for the 24th or the 30th, and so
that's right.
will abstain
Okay.
on those.
Okay. Okay, so I move approval of those three sets of minutes. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. First is John Van Scoyac.
With the, as I just said, aye, April 2nd.
Actually, maybe we should go each one by
That's
itself.
whatever you think is best.
Okay, let's start off by minutes for April 2nd, 2024. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Who's next? Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
Moved up in the world. And David Perlman.
Abstain. I wasn't on the committee at the time.
Okay. And chair votes aye. Next, April 24, 2024. I move approval. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Abstain.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And David Perlman.
Abstain.
And chair votes aye. Next, minutes for April 30, 2024. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Abstain.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Abstain.
And chair votes aye. So thank you. Okay, next, we have 26 miscellaneous items. If you start at item 4B, because 4A was the minutes, we go all the way down to item 4AA. So these include 5 appropriation transfers, which are necessary to close out the budget year, and 6 temporary alcohol licenses, among other miscellaneous items. But first, I'd like to ask David Perlman to read our Asian American Pacific Islander proclamation, after which we will discuss item 4F, which is a transfer of previous appropriations made to made from group health, where we have savings, to building school maintenance in the amounts of $787,000, where we under budgeted in fiscal year 2023 and are now catching up. And finally, we will have a discussion of item 4R, a donation for our Sustainability and Natural Resources Division. So after we have discussion of those items, we'll then come back and vote the entire list of miscellaneous items. So David, please.
Proclamation of the Brookline, Massachusetts Select Board recognizing Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas the month of May marks Asian American and Pacific Islander AAPI Heritage Month, which celebrates the histories of families who came to America from East and Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and the Pacific Island nations of Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. And whereas on October 23rd, 1992, Congress passed and the President signed Public Law 102-450, proclaiming the month of May to be AAPI Heritage Month. And whereas on May 1st, 2018, Governor Charles D. Baker signed House Bill 3360, an act designated May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Month in Massachusetts, and in recent years, local communities such as the city of Boston, Lexington, and Amherst have proclaimed May to be AAPI Month. And whereas AAPI residents constitute the largest community of color in the town of Brookline, according to the 2020 census, over 12,000 Brookline residents identify as AAPI, which is 19% of the town's population, or almost 1 in 5 residents. And whereas the AAPI community has suffered widespread discrimination and hateful and violent attacks throughout its history in America up to the present, and whereas despite discrimination and hate, the AAPI community has made important, long-lasting, and irreplaceable contributions to American life and culture, including in Brookline, and whereas AAPI American military personnel have served honorably, courageously, and with distinction in service to America in all its wars and other military duties, and whereas the Select Board of the Town of Brookline recognizes the contributions and the concerns of AAPI and other protected communities through celebrations and events, and whereas the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, ODICR, in conjunction with the Brookline Asian American Family Network, BAFN, has sponsored an AAPI Heritage Month celebration since 2016, now, therefore, the Select Board of the Town of Brookline, Massachusetts, hereby proclaims that the month of May shall be celebrated in Brookline as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. In furtherance of this proclamation, the Brookline Select Board hereby urges town departments and other local governmental and non-governmental bodies to develop programs, ceremonies, and activities to recognize and celebrate AAPI Heritage Month as appropriate to their missions, urges residents, visitors, and people passing through Brookline to use the month of May to start a year-round process to study, learn about, and reflect on the history, culture, and contributions of the AAPI community in America and in the town of Brookline, urges residents, visitors, and people passing through Brookline to challenge hateful messages and actions against the AAPI community, whether American-born, foreign-born citizens, or immigrants of America, and to acknowledge and learn about the historic discrimination inflicted upon the AAPI community and the recent increase in anti-Asian racism during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, David. Okay, next, we have two items that board members have asked to be taken out of the miscellaneous category and discussed separately. And assuming that there's no objection, we will vote them together with the other items at the end of this discussion. But let me start off by saying, largely for the benefit of David Perlman, okay, who's new to this board, that if possible, when you see a miscellaneous item that you think should not be voted without discussion or more information is needed, you can call Chaz or Charlie Young and see if they can clarify for you concerns that you may have, or whether they can prepare a discussion, a detailed explanation of the item at the select board meeting. Of course, there are certain items that you do want to have a fuller public hearing on, and it's perfectly appropriate to pull those out and have that fuller public hearing on something that you think needs to be more publicly discussed. So with that, we have item 4F, which is an appropriation transfer from the GIC to the building school maintenance account. And Paul, do you want to explain?
Sure.
What
Yes.
the concerns are there?
Yeah. And first, thank you, Chair Green, for highlighting the opportunities to bring some items outside of the miscellaneous agenda. So for me, there's often it has to do with a dollar value. So as you start getting up higher and higher in value for items, they often catch my attention. This one caught my attention because it's a request to transfer $787,000 from one account to another to cover a deficit in utilities for school buildings. And, Charlie did a great job in issuing the memo and answered, some of the questions I have, but I'm trying to just understand a little bit better systemically if, in addition to rates going up, which we know that occurred, is there something that's going on with our new buildings with respect to usage? And I had a conversation with Charlie about this, and he's prepared to talk. And I think it's beneficial for the board and the public to hear this, because this is a substantial increase in utility costs for the school building. So, Charlie, I know you're prepared for my questions, so I'm hoping that you could provide some insight into what's happening.
Sure. Yeah, Paul, I think you raised good questions, so I'm always happy to delve into this with you and other board members if they have further questions here or later. on utilities, please feel free to let me know. So Paul asked a good question, which is there a systemic issue with our buildings or with our usage? And this conversation began last year when we presented a $743,000 reserve fund transfer for school buildings. And advisory and other folks asked, what's going on in the buildings? And I have a slide which may appear to be a blizzard of numbers, but I'm hoping that it will be useful for everybody, where I'm going to show that essentially the total cost, give me just one moment to pull this up. I'm sorry, the total units used by the school buildings last fiscal year were actually below what we had estimated. So hopefully you folks are seeing a PowerPoint slide. So I'll walk through this very quickly. But essentially, this is what we had budgeted last year for units for the schools. This is kilowatt hours of electricity. And what it came in at was 500,000 kilowatt hours less than what we had initially anticipated. And so down here, you'll see that we were over budget in that account by $400,000. And as has been pointed out by Paul, that issue is almost entirely due to the cost of electricity going up by almost 50%, the unit cost of transmission for electricity going up significantly. There was another issue associated with 22 tap-ins, new design that's being worked through by the building department at the moment that is also causing some increases in cost and use. But on the whole, you can see that use was actually down last year. And so I guess to continue walking through this, where else are we seeing deficits? So the $400,000 in increased costs was carried through to this fiscal year. And so we're carrying that deficit plus another 200,000 here. That 200,000 is likely due, as pointed out down here, to perhaps a little bit more increase in costs, but also to 22 tap-ins design issue and to current costs that we're seeing for operating the new Driscoll School without its geothermal well. We've heard from building that is likely to be resolved by this fall, but there is still, from talking with Charlie Simmons, the building does seem to still be running at a higher cost than they had anticipated, even if you factor in for the fact that the building doesn't have geothermal wells. So our two latest buildings that have been completed are running at more expensive than we had initially anticipated. And so running down the list, that's basically the overview of electricity. We have almost 50% increase in unit costs that we have to deal with and absorb, plus our two newest buildings, and then or two latest projects that we completed. And then for natural gas, there are a couple of issues playing into this one. We did have a reporting error of almost 70,000 therms last year that caused a significant jump in what we were expecting for units. As you can see, the actuals for last year for natural gas were quite high. That was carried into this fiscal year as well, which is where you see this $185,000 increase. Water is partly due to an increase in cost that was not projected, but it is also due to increased use. And this we don't see as a systemic issue. As you can see, it's over by roughly the same amount as it was last year, and we're correcting for that in FY25. And it's my view that we're correcting for these as well in FY25. We have a total $831,000 increase in school building utilities, and we are expecting to see some solar credits come in that will help to get up to the total 907,000 deficit that we're seeing. And so just to clarify, we're only asking for $787,000 tonight because the costs to operate Driscoll without a geothermal well, it's been determined should come out of either the construction budget or perhaps a reserve fund transfer or another source because they simply weren't budgeted for and were an unforeseen cost outside of what we're seeing. So Paul, please go ahead and
So Chuck, could you please put that slide back up for a moment?
Sure.
It was not, and I appreciate the summary. It was not a blizzard, actually. It was actually quite good. The question I have though is the numbers that you're presenting were FY23, and this request is actually overage for FY24, correct?
Well, we have both. We have both here. So I'm sorry. I started with FY 23 because this is a deficit that's being carried from last year. Like,
Yeah, okay.
like I would say 700,000 of the 900,000 is known as of last year due to costs and other issues
Okay.
we've gone over. This is FY 24 here on this side. So this is our FY 24 budget. This is what we budgeted for electricity. This is what it came in at, and what we are and what.
But you don't have the electricity, because, you know, you and I spoke and you helped educate me, which I appreciate, that the unit cost of electricity went up substantially.
Right.
But you know, you're showing that electricity by unit consumption went down 515,000 units.
Right. And
What
so
is what is the FY 24 projected actual based on the current run rate for the school? Do we have that?
So, are you thinking
Units.
actual units? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that blank, yeah, that
didn't have,
blanked box
I
is important.
didn't have that in time for you today, Paul. So, as noted in the memo, these deficits were projected by the town's engineer GGD. I was sent the analysis that they provided earlier today, and it was done in a lump sum of cost.
Okay.
They didn't give us what they projected for units.
All
That
right,
is something I could give you.
Okay, Charlie, first, I've taken enough of the board's time on this. So first, thank you. My question really didn't get answered, which is, okay, it doesn't stop me from supporting this because this needs to be supported tonight. But I don't understand systemically if there are buildings that are problematic. So is Driscoll running higher, for example, than the 8,640,000 units, which were budgeted? What is its forecasted? It would be really helpful to get that information. You can send it to me later. And the same for natural gas. And it would be helpful to get that at the building level, to see what's happening with Tappan Street. I hear that there are some design issues that we're trying to work through, but that building is running at a much higher rate. And also that Driscoll, I suspect, is running higher than we had budgeted. And it would be really helpful to know if that is the case. And then to finally just highlight the money that we were expecting to include in the budget due to the geothermal wells. That's not in the operating budget. That's separate. It's being pulled out of the capital budget for the school. And if I'm correct, that's running about 20,000 a month, correct?
That is the engineer's estimate that they originally provided. They said it would cost 20K a month to operate without geothermal wells.
Okay, so we're underwriting that amount from essentially the bond, right, for the school. Is that
well, it
true?
hasn't happened yet necessarily. I think we spoke with Building Commissioner Dan Bennett today, and his plan is to go to the Building Commission about that and look at the budget and determine what's available, right? And then if failing that, it may need to be a reserve fund transfer for this fiscal year.
Okay, just to jump in on that, it's my preference that come out of the capital budget.
I understand that. I guess in summary, I am anxious about these numbers. And I don't have a sense that we have a good handle on it, and what's causing it.
So Paul, I can jump in. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to clarify that, on this sheet, we are pointing out exactly how much Driscoll is running over anticipated budget right here. It's running, currently bills are coming in between 40 and 62K. The engineer's estimate with geothermal was 20K. And talking with Charlie Simmons, we do think that in its initial 6 months of settling into its energy patterns, it is costing more to run, even if you factor in the geothermal. I can tell you that I've run separate analysis that shows that of this total, this total deficit we're looking at. Let me just pull it up in just a second here. The large majority of it, 400,000 of electricity, 100,000 of 150,000 of natural gas are due to unit cost increases. So we're talking about more than 2/3 of this being related to increases in unit costs that were not captured in the budget. So the delta there is, between $200,000 and $300,000. Some of that is water. And the remainder of that can be applied to some of these issues we've highlighted, a 70K error in reporting out of therms. I'd be happy to go over it in more detail. Perhaps after we get through this transfer and get through town meeting, we could have a broader presentation about utilities and where they stand. But I don't want to paint the picture that we're not aware of where these deficits are. The majority of them are in unit costs.
Okay. Yep, I think a follow-up just on school projected unit consumption would be really helpful. That's the hole that's missing for me right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John?
So we have a long agenda tonight, and if it's okay, I'm just going to put my comment in the form of a comment so that we don't need to sort of go back and forth, question and answer. I just want to stipulate that I'm going to assume that what's being shown to us is a projection of how much over budget we will be by the end of FY24, because we haven't reached the end of FY24 yet, and that we won't be hearing a further request for more funds before the end of FY24. In other words, this isn't just catch up to where we are, and then if it continues to go over what we anticipated, we'll have to do it again before the end of FY24. That's what I'm going to assume. The other thing I am going to assume is that if this is the new normal in terms of rates and in terms of usage and in terms of the anticipated difference between the experience of the former school buildings and the new school buildings, that built into the FY25 budget already is the new normal. So I hope we won't in FY25, again, have to play catch up with energy costs because there wasn't sufficient money in the budget. So I'll just leave that there as a comment. Charlie, thank you very much. Your presentation was very helpful.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions, comments? No? Let's move on to item 4R.
And on there, we have Commissioner Shute from DPW to introduce this subject, and I believe she has brought along with us our new Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources, Alexandra Vecchio. So if we could promote both of them, that would be great.
Good evening. Erin Shute, Commissioner of Public Works. Congratulations to Chairman Green and Vice Chair Van Scoyac, and welcome to Select Board Member Perlman. Public Works looks forward to working with all of you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the new Sustainability and Natural Resources Division and an incredible grant, $750,000 over 3 years to support our efforts in the Department of Public Works. We understand one of the Select Board's top goals has been to make significant advances in the area of sustainability to reach the town's carbon reduction goals, attain meaningful project implementation grants, improve the inclusion of climate change and adaptation initiatives across all departments, and increase our outreach efforts to help residents make meaningful change as well. So the creation of a new division with 2 new full-time staff, an assistant director and a project manager that will help support community outreach and large municipal grants are envisioned ultimately as the core group that will lead this charge and change for the town. So I've been working tirelessly on a grant, the $750,000 that we're looking to have you accept this year, for this upcoming year, to help us build and establish the foundation for this new division. I know that it's the intent to fund these positions, and the town administrator and I are looking for ways to make that happen. But I also know that you want change and you want to see that right away. And so with that, I just want to note that this grant is really unprecedented in a lot of ways. It is unprecedented in its value, the dollar value, its ability for us to use for operations. And I want to note that it really recognizes great support for and trust of the Department of Public Works to execute this. So really excited about the grant, excited about this new division, and it's really a great pleasure to introduce Alexandra Vecchio, who is perfectly positioned to implement this new division successfully within Public Works and for the town. She has been our Director of Parks and Open Space for 3.5 years and has touched all things climate and sustainability related, from our EV charging stations to greening our municipal fleet, to zero waste, to stormwater, to urban forestry. She has her master's from Yale University School of Forestry and Environmental Studies with a focus on climate adaptation and land use planning, and is going to be an incredible asset for us. And she was the climate change program director for Mass Audubon before this. So I think what a lot of people don't know about Alexandra is that her passion and her purpose, her education, what she has done before being our incredible Director of Parks and Open Space has been climate focused. And I think you are going to be really impressed with the work that this very talented woman will be able to achieve for the town. And I'm really proud to have her on my team. And maybe if I could beg the indulgence of the board, maybe just a moment for Alexandra to say hello and maybe a minute or two of her
Please
vision.
do. Yeah. It's great that we have such a incredible person to take over this division that we found in-house. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for that lovely introduction, Commissioner Toot. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alexandra Vecchio, and as the Commissioner mentioned, for the past 3.5 years, I've had the pleasure of serving as the town's Parks and Open Space Director. It's really been an extraordinary learning opportunity, and it's given me the chance to really get to know and work with our amazing staff, volunteers, elected officials that make Brookline such a fantastic community and will be key players in the success of this new division. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to applaud the Parks and Open Space Division. They're made up of some of the most talented, hardworking, and creative problem solvers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And the next Parks Director that comes in has the pleasure of joining a great team that forever holds a special place in my heart. And I very much appreciate everything that they've done. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to step into the role as the Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources. As the Commissioner mentioned, this is a dream opportunity for me. I know the urgency that Brookline feels to address the climate crisis because I personally feel that every day as well. And it's been the driving force behind my personal and professional life work for the past 15 years. I do consider this my life work, and I consider, as the Commissioner has heard me say, I think this is the work that fills up my cup and helps me to continue fighting for meaningful climate solutions. So particularly excited to step into this role at this time. By that, I mean, we're really building a new division within the Department of Public Works, an incredible team. I think this new structure will afford us the opportunity to really operationalize our climate and overall sustainability actions across the town. And I'm excited about this chance to build this team, thanks to the support from this grant, that will have the right skills and the right vision to help Brookline realize their crucial climate goals. So I think bringing together that team, as well as this interdisciplinary working group across all departments that really focuses on measurable and achievable climate actions in a coordinated manner. I'm sure you all are familiar with the Collins report that came out a few years ago. So this is somewhat similar to one of the recommendations in there, that we're really bringing together people from all departments and having this shared agenda of climate, our work together, and how we're going to achieve it in each of our respective roles. So I really see sustainability as something that needs to be integrated across the organization, and I think this division allows us the opportunity to do that. So I really appreciate the Select Board and the Town Administrator's leadership on this topic, and I anticipate us working together closely and regularly, along with ZIAB and our other community partners, to help deliver on our various climate mitigation and resiliency goals. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And I do ask for a little bit of patience as I continue to serve as the Parks and Open Space Director the next few months until we fill that role. But am starting to integrate with ZIAB, some of the community groups. I've met with Climate Action Brookline, et cetera, and really look forward to doing a deeper dive on that as the summer moves on. So thank you all.
Yes, we appreciate. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as we ramp up and we're able to sort of work the funding and budget for the positions into the division over time, we can then transition the use of these grant funds to very specific projects and initiatives.
Thank you. Let me just say that we're really looking forward to you getting up and running. We understand that it's going to be very difficult juggling 2 jobs, talking to Alexandra. But, you know, the board and the town is very, very glad that we have this new position staffed and up and running. And thank you to all who have made this possible. So, David, you had your hand up?
Yes. This is certainly critical work. I'm very appreciative of it. I do, though, have a long-term funding question. So the grant will cover 3 years. What happens in year 4? And do we already have a plan for that?
So we are looking at this as we look at this as a pilot, right? This is the opportunity for us to have the runway necessary to demonstrate the success and the value to the community of this. We also are obviously committed to, wherever possible, diversifying funding sources, particularly when it comes to projects. We want to be as grant focused as possible, which is why we have dedicated grant making capacity built into the office. But yes, at the end of the day, we are going to take on operating expenses for this. One of the things that we worked through, if the board decides at the end of the 3-year period that we're continuing with this as a formal process out of the pilot, and we'll use the traditional tools and methods that the town has used in the past to evaluate that. The evaluations from the Committee on Town Organization and Structure, your own evaluations, the input from the community to determine the value of this effort and the budget that it then is going to require. But one of the things that we did in studying this for some time was try and figure out, is there a way to make this totally self-sustaining on outside funding? And the answer we got is no. That currently in Massachusetts, there's just not enough money to drive the self-sustaining sort of outside sources for sustainability. Other communities have done this by kind of getting a runway up with ARPA, and now they're coming to the same ARPA cliff we're coming to. I think it's more appropriate for us to develop the data we have in hand, develop that strong grant-making capacity, utilize the state's new Office of Grant Management, which is a really good resource that we have just only started to utilize, and then figure out from there, what is the bottom line number? Where are we paying for it from out of our sources, and put that question to you, the select board, and to town meeting, and determine how we move forward based on that at the end of this 3-year period.
All right.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Shute, and also thank you so much, Alexandra Vecchio, for saying yes to the offer of filling this very important position. I love it when talent that exists within our own ranks is recognized, and I love it when we have exceptional talent within our own ranks. And that turns out to have been the case when this position needed to be filled. And I think people are going to discover some things about Alexandra that they didn't know before in terms of her background and her skills. I think we're going to have terrific potential with the combination of the hiring of Alexandra and then the arrival of this gift. I have a couple of questions. I'm just going to pose the questions, and then I think maybe our town administrator might be the best position to answer them, but maybe Commissioner Shute might be the best person to answer them. Question number 1 is, do we have a policy on charitable grants of this nature? And the reason I ask is that I think it's well understood that when a grant comes from a state or a state department, there's all kinds of conditions that apply and all kinds of monitoring that kind of kicks in. But what happens when it's and I won't say this is a no strings attached grant, because I don't know. And that kind of leads to my second question, which is that if we do have a policy, does it say anything about whether grants can come with strings attached? And if we don't have a policy, is that one of the questions we need to examine? And then there's a somewhat related issue, which I just want to kind of get clarification on. It's my understanding that some legislative changes are going to be needed, or legislative approvals are going to be needed for us to set up this division. And if that is correct, are we setting that in motion at this point?
So I can answer, both of those questions. The first is the terms of gifts are actually set by state law, Chapter 53A, and thanks to Melissa Goff for the reference there. And what the policy there is, the donor sets the terms, and we are then empowered to accept or reject depending on what those terms are. And so in the past, what we have done is we have been very, I would say, diligent on this on a case-by-case basis, because to your point, I don't think there's any gift that is no strings attached, even if the strings are simply just, we want you to, in this case, fulfill this work for 3 years, demonstrate its value for 3 years with the benefit of this gift so that the community can make an informed decision on its value. That is still a condition of the grant. And so we have to determine whether or not it's in our best interest to accept that. But we also then, with the assistance of town council's office and others, make sure that we are not in a position where we are unable to maneuver. And I know in the past, prior to me being here, there have been circumstances where initially someone has said, I'd like to make a donation to the town. I'd like to make a bequest to the town under the following conditions. And, over the course of negotiating, the town has realized that, it's very kind. The intent is well-meaning, but ultimately there is a desire to move in a policy direction that the select board at the time didn't want to move forward with. And so as a result, the board was empowered to say, thank you very much, but we don't want to accept under these terms. So we don't have a firm policy on when we automatically say yes or no, but we rely on you, the select board, to determine whether you think the conditions of the gift are appropriate in terms of accepting it. On terms of the structure of the department. So the Department of Public Works is in part a creature of state statutes. There's a special act that was passed in 1981 that created our current Department of Public Works. It talks about some of the divisions that are created within there, but one, we don't necessarily view that list as exclusive. For example, we've now combined some of those divisions, some of those functions. We have in the past kind of teased those things out. It really just describes the work that the department is meant to undertake. There's also language in there about appointments and how people are empowered to appoint there. I think that's actually been superseded by the Town Administrator Act, which was passed 4 years later in '85. So we're not concerned there from an appointments perspective. But what I will say is this is a structural change to the town. What we want to do is we want to balance the requests that we've heard from the select board, which is move expeditiously on sustainability and create tangible results. Don't just hire for the sake of hiring and then have one person kind of warehoused, unable to do the necessary work for us to do our climate work. But also go through the processes that are necessary, consult with the community, make sure that the community has buy-in to this process. And we think the best way to do that is to move forward with this now with the understanding that this is data that we are collecting so that the town can make an informed decision on how much to spend and what to do as we continue to develop this. There's, it's really a monumental task to think about climate sustainability, climate resiliency, climate mitigation, natural resources management, just the act of decarbonizing our buildings that we own under current dollar values. We're talking, it could be an 8-figure, a 9-figure project lasting towards 2040 and 2050. But there's so much we don't know about that. And we need to have the capacity to really develop concrete planning and structures in place so that the community can then make that informed decision. Yes, it's worth it to spend this money. And I'm hoping that at the end of this, with Alexandra's leadership, we're going to see that that's very much the case.
So just to be clear though, our view is that we don't need to go forward to seek town meeting approval to create this division or to have town meeting seek home rule to create this division?
Correct. We don't think it's necessary, but we definitely think that proper consultation with the community is going to be necessary. So whether or not it's legally required, we want to do it.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I have 2 quick questions. First, Alexandra, congratulations on your appointments. I have no doubt you're going to do a fantastic job. I'm looking forward to working with you. It's very important. I wanted to understand a little bit more about the grant. John touched on it a little bit. Were there any specific criteria or expectations that came with the grant, other than it be used within the departments of public works to establish a new sustainability and Natural Resources Division?
I don't believe so, but I'll let the commissioner answer that question.
Yeah, I would say that it is very broad.
Okay.
And so that the idea there really is to allow me as commissioner to see where those dollars are most needed in terms of shoring up this new division.
Okay.
And so no stipulations, except it really does require, and I think it's important as part of this grant, there's a level of trust that I am going to be overseeing all aspects of the administration of this for said purpose. And that's
Right.
really it.
Great. And that's really helpful. Now, first, it's an amazing charitable gift. I don't know, have we had something like this before? This is so first, thank you to whoever that anonymous donor is. I do want to say that first. And my next question is really just from a being responsible about the future. It is a 3-year grant, $250 per year. Is there any guarantee that next year we'd get it again? There is an expectation that this is the Department of Public Works. We may find that, we have to make this outside of the Public Works and it needs to go back to the town administrator for the reasons that John brought up. I assume right now we know that we've got at least 1 year.
Yes, and I think true too. In the unlikely event that something like that happens, something truly structural, I think we've done our due diligence on this. We've talked about the importance of this living in an operational division. We've talked about the difference between having it in the select board's office versus in a departmental office. Different communities are doing this different ways.
Right.
We talked about in terms of operational offices, whether this would be better fit for buildings and public works. And we came to the conclusion that it was public works. So I think we've done our homework here and feel confident that this is the right fit for this department.
But I guess mine was just more about the money. And again, this is not questioning the donor at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is an amazing gift. And, the organization that they're working with is extremely credible and reliable, frankly. I just, hiring, I think David raised it a little bit earlier, hiring off of a funding source that we know is going to end.
Yes.
Is a little concerning.
Yeah.
And I hope we recognize that.
Yes.
Okay. And then my second question has to do with where our opportunities are for carbon reduction. We just had a lengthy discussion about the cost of utilities at some school buildings. And that's that 70%, I believe 70% of our carbon footprint is in our buildings.
Yes.
Right. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how this new organization within DPW will help integrate and drive strategy for the largest component of our carbon generation in reducing that. How will that work?
Well, I'll just discuss briefly the structure, and then I want to let Alexandra speak. Structurally, how we've set up this division is that there is a new dotted line report to the Deputy Director of Public Buildings, who is taking on increased sustainability responsibilities. That's Sarah Gooding currently. And she is going to be responsible with Alexandra's guidance and supervision for developing this decarbonization plan and implementing it in the public building sector. We have historically proceeded opportunistically on that front. Now, with these resources, we're going to be able to proceed much more deliberately. We're going to have a long-range capital plan for decarbonization, and that's going to be something that takes some time to really develop, but that's going to be something that's done through the building department in conjunction with the building department with clear roles and responsibilities. So it's not just, we have the money, we can do this project, which is how we're decarbonizing the senior center.
But I also assume, Chaz, just to follow up, that we would be partnering with and working heavily with ZAB.
Yes.
Who has a lot of this building, infrastructure experience.
Yes.
And that perhaps the next hire into this organization would also have a strong building sustainability background to help augment the existing staff.
I would love to let Alexandra speak.
Okay.
Sure. Thanks, Chaz. I think Chaz answered kind of the first part of what I was going to say, was that it's really going to require close cooperation with the building department, and really that kind of what I mentioned about that interdisciplinary team at the beginning, the building department's going to play a really critical role in that. And then to your point, Paul, I think the other piece is that we need to make sure that we have the right skills on the staff. And so the assistant director position, we're looking for someone, well, we will be looking for someone that has that energy background and decarbonization focus in particular. And then I will say also that the Zero Emissions Advisory Board has done some work already on some emissions reductions kind of at a high level of what are the opportunities and what are the barriers to implement those. And so our hope is that that will be one, really critical work for us to hit the ground running with, but two, can be a really strong foundation for our climate action plan and our climate goals that will really define success of this division as we move forward.
Great. First, I want to thank you. I want to thank John. I think he pulled this out of the miscellaneous agenda to talk about the grant, but I think the value has actually had this conversation more about the organization and how we're going to move forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
was
you.
there any other questions from the select board? And thank you, Alexandria and Aaron, for bringing us up to speed on the sustainability and natural resources division. So next, I want to move approval of items 4B through 4AA. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, we have the question of an appropriation transfer. I'm sorry, a reserve fund transfer. Request from the Human Resources Director in the amount of $140,000. Are you going to give some background on that, or do we have Ann Braga?
I know Ann is here. I think Charlie or
Oh, I
Ann,
see
I'm not sure.
Ann's up there.
Yep. Yep, Ann is there.
I've promoted Melissa, or I can try to take this one.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. So tell us about
My-
this reserve fund transfer.
So we're requesting $140,000 to fund extraordinary legal expenses that have come in higher than expected for the year, as well as a small amount for our pre-employment physicals. So $137,000 for legal expenses and $3,000 for pre-employment physicals. We've done a lot of hiring in police and fire, and the cost of those physicals has gone up higher than our budgeted amount.
Okay, any questions from the select board? Paul?
I have one quick one. Thanks, Joanne. So the legal fees are for this year. Next year, are these being moved into the town council's office? Because I know we increased some capability there for investigations, or is this a separate activity?
This is a separate activity.
This is a separate activity. Okay, thank you.
So it's, and the funding is for litigation related expenses, not investigations.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anything else you want to say about this? No? Okay, I move approval of the reserve fund transfer from the advisory, from the Human Resources Director in the amount of $140,000 from reserve fund to legal services and to pre-employment physicals. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Sir, can I just point out that
Yes.
this needs to go through the advisory committee
Right.
presumably? Okay,
We just give preliminary approval.
right, exactly. And
Yeah.
I think that's important to say.
And they will have plenty of questions.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dan.
I'm sorry.
I just said thank you, Dan.
Okay. Next, site plan review fees, review and possible vote on the request from the town's regulatory division to charge fees for site plan review applications. So who do we have to discuss this? I see.
Good evening. I'm Maria Morelli from the Regulatory
hi.
Division.
Okay, so tell us about this
Okay.
proposed fee structure.
Okay, thank you very much. So the regulatory division is asking for the select board's approval to charge fees for site plan review applications. Currently, there is no fee for these cases. This is related to some of the operational tasks associated with fall 2023 town meetings approval of two big zoning amendments that implemented section 9.13. That's a townwide site plan review bylaw. It would readily apply to the new MBTA Communities Overlay District. And Chapter 11-9, that's another new site plan and design review bylaw that's unique to the Harvard Street form-based zones. So the fee structure we're using is comparable to the current fee structure that we already have for site plan and for sign and facade cases and for special permits. So if you see the dark box in your overview memo, the $300 fee would be for Harvard Street form-based projects that are under 1,000 square feet of net new gross floor area. All other projects would be analogous to our special permit or Board of Appeals applications, and that's $350 plus $50 for every 1,000 square feet of net new gross floor area. And I would say that there might be some cases where a site plan review would also require a special permit or a variance. And in that case, the applicant would pay only one of those fees. So we wouldn't be double dipping. We seem to be in line with other communities that we've looked at that are comparable to Brookline, but we are going to be examining this fall, our fees in general to make sure that they are in line with the amount of hours that staff puts in to these cases. And so that's pretty much it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, any questions from the board? None? Okay,
Oh, let's do it.
fairly straightforward. I'm sorry, pardon me?
We have a long agenda.
Okay, remember that when you want to discuss other issues. Okay, seeing no questions, I move approval of the town's regulatory division's fees for site plan review applications structure. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Next, restaurant bar business hours review.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, thank you. And this has come out of the discussions at the Select Board's licensing panel for David's benefit and the benefit of some of the community members. We have a license panel now that conducts the hearings for licenses. Previously, the Select Board used to conduct these hearings as part of their regularly scheduled business in these evenings, and we heard feedback from business owners that it was be more advantageous to have these meetings during the day when, regular hours when their attorneys were available. Before, for example, businesses open, restaurants would open on any given night. More effective for them to have that opportunity to be heard. And then if their applications are not controversial, they move, that is, if no one raises any concerns or objections, they can be then placed on your miscellaneous agenda and moved through with a minimum of discussion after the necessary public hearings have been held. In the event that there are issues that come up for discussion, we bring them to you, and this is one of those issues. We have had a growing number of requests at the licensing panel for restaurants and bars to stay open till 2 a.m. And historically, the board has taken those on a case-by-case basis. But now we are really looking at a number of kind of clusters of restaurants and bars that are open till 2 a.m. And there isn't currently a town-wide policy in place on what closing hours for these businesses should be. And so we wanted to bring this to your attention to receive guidance from you on what you think an appropriate framework for the approval or further analysis of hours is. I'm going to share my screen by starting by sharing this document, which is a map that Tiffany Souza, our licensing specialist, provided to us and is in your packets. I just think it's very helpful, and thanks to Tiffany for putting this together. Here is a map of Brookline. And you can see here that I'll move the closed captions here. You can see here that the large number of liquor licenses and that are open, kind of concentrate in various areas: Coolidge Corner, Brookline Village, Washington Square, and then along Com Ave, along the south side of Com Ave. You can see that there are some restaurants and bars in, I would call, up and coming neighborhoods: JFK Crossing, St. Mary's, and then you have sort of outliers. You have restaurants and bars that are perhaps in hotels, as here in Longwood, here on the border, or actually, I think that's what's that, Golden Gold Temple.
Longwood Station?
No, not at Longwood Station. No. And then this one here at the Country Club. So you can see here that there are these various clusters where you have in the past approved 2 a.m. closing times. And so as the memo in your packet points out, once you approve closing hours, it's hard to unring that bell. It's hard to go back and say, we thought about this and we've decided we really don't want 2 a.m. closing hours. In the absence of, justifiable evidence to demonstrate that, going forward, closing hours should really only be 1 a.m. or midnight. Basically on that front, you want to think through strategically how you want to move forward from where you are, knowing that it's difficult to turn back the clock if in certain areas. How do you want to ensure that if there are areas where you would like a presumption that places should stay open till 2 a.m., what the geographic confines of that are, whether or not you would be willing to consider a structure such as the kind of ad hoc structure that we have now, which is we have been saying to applicants, we will approve an application to midnight, or in one case in JFK Crossing to 1 a.m. But if you want to go later than that, you have to go before the select board, and all applications for 2 a.m. closings would go before you. There could also be a sort of division. For example, I think Paul Warren raised this last week in a discussion where you could have restaurants have their kitchens open till 2 a.m., but not have food service open till 2 a.m. if the restaurant's desire was to just be, a kitchen serving Uber Eats and DoorDash. So all of those are options. Within the memo are, just very preliminary sketches of where I think the current 2 a.m. boundaries might be in the neighborhoods that have 2 a.m. And I have visual resources for that as well, and I'll just walk you through them. But then we really need guidance from you on what to do here.
Can I add one thing?
I think Mike.
Yeah, I'm fundamentally uncomfortable with 2 a.m. And I think that certainly food service is probably less of an issue than alcohol. And so the suggestion you make about leaving kitchens open makes sense to me. I think the difficulty with 2 a.m. is that virtually every restaurant, food service place in Brookline is very close to residences. Even the ones along Commonwealth Avenue, the buildings back up to residences. And I really don't want people to be disturbed on a Saturday night over near Boston University. I think the potential for that is very high, honestly. Nothing against Boston University students, but they're more likely to stay up and drink than people in my generation are.
And they sing going down Carlton Street.
And they sing going down Carlton Street. Indeed, they probably sing all the way down to where you live.
The BU Bridge.
So I would proceed with extreme caution. And that's when I would say to my colleagues, extreme caution about setting any sort of policy that favors 2 a.m. Closing, certainly for alcoholic beverages, but even for food service.
Paul.
Yeah. So I just want to back up a little bit as to why this is coming to us.
Yeah.
So as you know, I serve with Chaz on this licensing subcommittee. And as Chaz mentioned, we're increasingly being asked to approve 2 a.m. And the first question is, well, what other restaurants or businesses around are open to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m.? And quite frankly, I grew uncomfortable approving a 2 a.m., and even sometimes a 1 a.m., knowing that it would come to this board in the consent agenda and we would never really talk about it. And so that's really the purpose of this discussion is it's really forcing us to ask the questions about how late and where does that approval happen? So even if we decide to do 2 a.m., you still may want to do that approval at the board level and not as part of the consent agenda. You may want to have a public hearing to hear from the community on what it means for 2 a.m. And the last thing I'll say is just because a business has a closing time doesn't mean they use it. So for example, Taberna de Haro in St. Mary's, I think they even have a 1 or 2 a.m. closing time on the list, but in fact, they probably close at 10. Or 11 is the latest that they close. So they don't go far beyond the time that's available. So this is a struggle for me, and you raise good points, Mike.
John?
Yeah, to me, there are just a lot of mysteries about this. And among them, Paul mentioned, I mean, how many of these people to whom we have given 2 a.m. licenses actually, use the license up till 2 a.m.? I've never been able to figure that out. My particular history with this goes back to a succession of requests that we got, and people kept coming in, and it was almost automatic that if they wanted a alcohol license, they would ask for it to be serving until 2 a.m. And I thought, well, who are all these people who are all of a sudden interested in staying open until 2 a.m. in Brookline? And I never seem to see that many, except for Grand O'Malley's. I'll admit, I think they do actually use their license for that purpose. So are they requesting the permission just to make the license more valuable? That's question number one on my mind. And, do we actually is our interest as a town served, if that's the only reason that they're requesting this, but not because they're actually going to serve the public until 2 a.m. The next question is, if there are a fair number of establishments that are using the full value of their 2 a.m. license, have they become dependent on this for their economic viability? Because frankly, I'm very concerned about the noise impacts of having establishments open until 2 a.m., but I'm also very concerned about helping people in our commercial districts survive economically. It hasn't been the easiest of times, and I don't want to be party to decisions that are going to put anybody out of business unless there has been a demonstrated problem of noise. And that's the final mystery is I assume noise is going to be a problem when establishments stay open till 2 a.m. I'm not sure we've had in my term and 1 year on the select board, people come to us at any of our hearings with maybe one exception, saying this very noisy bar is keeping me awake at night because you gave them permission to stay open until 2 a.m. So it doesn't yet seem to have become a problem, but I'm not sure that I've seen all, that I know all of the realities for people who live near these establishments.
And I think the past incidents of noise have been related to BU parties, not in bars. Yeah. So let's make sure that we're trying to fix a problem that actually exists. David?
Right. I agree with John. I think that it's a very important concern. We want to make sure that we're not putting our restaurants potentially out of business when they make these requests. I think it's important for us to have a full cataloging of what the noise complaints are. Also, perhaps conversations with our police department about whether there's any increase in crime from having these extra hours. I think it's also important to have a rhyme or reason to why some places get to have 2 a.m., but maybe next door we're saying no, or potentially saying no. Just have some kind of system in place, some kind of rubric, some kind of mechanism by which we judge these decisions rather than as one-offs.
Well,
So I guess as a member of the board that sits on this committee with Chaz, I asked for your guidance because, what David just said is exactly what we're facing. People are asking for 2 a.m. and it may be a renewal. We don't hear complaints. If it's new, we're looking down the road. Well, there's one a block down that's at 2 a.m. So but if you, with that methodology, you're going to creep up Beacon Street all the way to JFK Crossing. So I would ask that the board provide guidance to us as a committee as to when is midnight the cutoff for us to approve and it goes into the consent agenda, and after midnight requires a direct item that's not in the consent agenda and a public hearing by the board?
John?
Yeah, I'm willing off the cuff just to offer some guidance. I think we've raised enough questions that first point would be, we shouldn't, from this point forward, we shouldn't be issuing any more 2 a.m. licenses until we get a handle on the situation with the ones we've already issued and whether they are causing problems. So that would be my first suggestion. And my second suggestion would be that we go back to what used to be. Now I'm relying on memory, which is not really, reliable. But Tiffany, I'm sure, could tell us, before we started issuing 2 a.m. licenses routinely, what was the, normal closing hour that we would attach to licenses? I seem to recall 11 p.m. And I think if we're going to, at least for the time being, freeze the further issuance of 2 a.m. licenses, we could go back to what was the commonplace practice beforehand, but whether it's 11 p.m. or midnight, whatever it was.
John, Bernard?
Mike?
So with regard to the economic viability of restaurants, don't forget that what we're talking about here is not taking anybody's license and restricting them back from
Right.
it's already been granted.
Right.
It's licensee or licensed applicants who come in looking for a new license. And a new establishment that's told 1 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. or whatever time is going to, the operators of that facility are going to have to factor that in to their planning. And if it becomes a standard that, 1 a.m. is a limit or midnight is a limit without some sort of special action by the select board, then people they'll accommodate to that. They'll understand that when they're putting their plans together. So I'm not too worried about not at all worried about putting anybody who's in existence out of business. The other thing is, I'm now replacing you on that, on the licensing board, and I'm thinking to myself, do we want to we have a lot of restaurants that are regularly opening. The restaurant business is a bit of a revolving door. And do we want to, we accomplish something by by setting up the licensing board as a screen? And do we want to make a great big hole in that screen and bring things to the select board? So
I guess you just shared something with me that I didn't know. Have I been raised?
you asked me to take that on for it.
Yeah, I remember.
Maybe I did. I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least that's why I went there the last.
So this is your problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike,
Well,
run with it.
yeah. Well, no, but it becomes our problem as the five of us if we end up bringing specific applicants back into here.
Well, applicants should know, we should determine what the standard is so that they know.
Yeah.
Today, I believe that those that bring license requests before us, the lawyers,
Yeah.
law firms, know that we can go to 2 a.m. And so they ask for that.
Yeah.
If there's a change, we should communicate that what that change will be.
Okay.
I think this is all very helpful to start with. I think, one of the things that I'm hearing from all of you is that we need more information from the businesses directly. So the questions I'm hearing, and from our town departments, what noise complaints are we getting? Is there any increase in crime based on the extra hours? What can the police department tell us about that? How many of these places are actually using the hours that we give them? You are authorized to open until X time. How late are you actually open on a regular basis? And how critical are your late hours to your operations? I think what we're seeing in Brookline Village is the development of a culture of late night food and drink, with, you know, Mahaniam now opening its bar next door, with Blossom Bar, and Anatolia then getting the same treatment. There is kind of a cluster of late night establishments in Brookline Village, but that hasn't gone unnoticed. We have gotten complaints about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to balance those things out. It is that area is shifting, and the question is, how do we balance that? So we can get that information for you to help you make an informed decision on where you might want to go with this, and that might be a good first step.
In terms of Brookline Village, what type of complaints have you been receiving? Noise complaints?
Noise complaints. People, you know, we've received a couple in particular about, you know, as you get further away from Anatolia, you know, that are closer in that area. You know, you really do have people who live right in the heart of the village. And, you know, there's that balance of where you live in a more, you know, a less suburban and more urban part of town. There is that balance and trade-off there. But it's 2 a.m. People have a right to quiet enjoyment. People have a right to go to bed. So,
David.
I was just going to say it is a very tricky balance. So I don't know how many of you are sports fans, but for bars, if you are open until 1 a.m., you can see, for the most part, the full West Coast games that come on at 10. If you close at midnight, you're getting kicked out in the fourth quarter or the 7th inning, and that hurts business because people will just say, forget it, I'm going to go to Cleveland Circle because I want to watch the game uninterrupted. So we need to be mindful about that too.
Yeah, that's good.
Good point.
That's a good point. Yeah.
so
So it's a type of information that I think that we don't always factor into our decision making.
Right.
I also would just note that in the Q&A, town meeting member Fran Perler noted that there's a concern about outdoor dining. Our outdoor dining program, I think, has a mandatory closing time of 11. So there, at least, we're not having people outside past 11 p.m. But that's just a good thing to flag for folks, as we saw an application come in where they said, hey, can we have outdoor dining till 2 a.m.? And our eyes popped out of our head and said, you know, don't think so. I just want to briefly show you the kind of drawings that we made, very rough drawings based on where we know 2 a.m. Where 2 a.m. operations are. We have the largest one is in Coolidge Corner. You can see there the Graham O'Malley's at the corner there. Note that this stops at Babcock Street, which addresses the issue that Paul raised of this issue of are you just going to continue to creep out along Beacon or up along Harvard? You have Washington Square, which is a much more contained neighborhood. It's more of a rectangle, but you see it's pretty easy to determine boundaries on Washington Square. Brookline Village, a little more complicated, but again, based on where existing businesses are. I would also note I accidentally did not include Station Street along here. Station Street is a potential wing of this that could go out. But again, there aren't businesses on Station Street currently open past midnight. There aren't any businesses open at night on Station Street, period. It's just that given its proximity to public transit, if you wanted to do that, that's an option. And then Com Ave, again, is relatively simple, with the understanding, as Mike said, that it really does. You know, I drive down Dummer Street every day to go home. It abuts directly onto residences. So you have things to consider here. The thing that I would just flag for you as we develop this is, to Mike's point, is that if you make a decision that we're going to take every 2 a.m. application at the board level, then I do think it's worthwhile to analyze the reasonableness inquiry of the grant with town council's office, just because you will get people coming in and saying, hey, I'm next door to a business on Beacon Street that's open till 2. Why can't you give me 2? And, you know, that fight may accidentally push you in a direction you don't want to go. Having clear guidance and having clear boundaries on a map that you can point to and say, hey, sorry, beyond this line, no, not without special permission of the select board, gives you gives you a more grounded reasonableness inquiry. So when someone says, I'm next to a 2 a.m., why can't I have this? The answer is because we looked at it and reasonably that's too close to residences, or that's too, you know, that's not in the commercial area that we've identified. So,
by the way, I mean, Station Street definitely should be on there because, I mean, given its location, given that there are just a few residential houses towards the east of Station Street, that's where we're going to find commercial development in terms of bars and restaurants. If It's probably the prime location, given the tea right there and everything else.
I look forward to having a cocktail at 1:55 a.m. at the puppet show place.
David, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I was just going to say that what Chaz touched upon about having different regulations for outdoor versus indoor, I think is very sensible because I don't see why there should be a need for outdoor dining, which can be a lot noisier past a certain time. But I do see a need for sports fans to stay open till 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And you can do both. And so I think we can look at this also based upon whether it's indoor or outdoor.
Yep.
Yeah, we also limited outdoor dining for purposes of cleanup, which is especially with the rat problem, was a hot issue.
So I think on our end, on staff's end, we will take these questions back out to departments and to the businesses that are listed on the spreadsheet that you have that are open past 2. We will ask them for their input and we can come back to you at a future meeting. Is there anything else we can provide to you?
Yeah, when you talk to the businesses, I think it's important to say we're not thinking about taking something away. What we're interested in understanding is what are they operating that late? As Paul asked, very sensible question. Some of them that I look at, I think, I doubt very much that they're open that late. And if they are open that late, how significant is that in their business? The one, I think, just as an aside, Dave is absolutely right about a bar that has a TV up. You don't want to close down a game as you say, in the 7th inning. That's 1 a.m. just feels different than 2 to me.
Okay, David. Yeah.
Just one other quick question. So regarding what Mike is saying about not taking anything away, so we treat renewal requests differently than a brand new request?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
What we say is, so we renew licenses once a year, usually in December. And what we say in kind of omnibus fashion, and what we say at that time is sometimes people come in with complaints and they say, hey, this is great. It's a renewal. I can complain. And what we say is we don't take away anyone's license at renewal, because that's inadequate notice. If there is a complaint that comes through, we give them notice and a conditional renewal, and then we address the issues accordingly. So renewal, there is a general expectation that unless a business has done something wrong, they are entitled to have their license renewed.
Right.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, let's move on to records retention boards and commissions generic emails.
Right.
I'm
So
just reading out of the agenda.
yes,
There's a better way of
it's
describing this, but
right. To town meeting member Votes point earlier in public comment, we've received a request to be more transparent in how we maintain records for boards and commissions appointed by the select board. And the goal of this proposed policy is to balance that desire with cost and risk. While I think everyone would be happy if we could issue a brooklinema.gov email address to every board and committee member, we're already talking about in excess of 100 email addresses. The cost to have two-factor authentication from Microsoft and Duo and et cetera is quite high, as you'll see in the ARPA allocations. That endpoint security is an expensive proposition, even with the current amount of email addresses we have, and that is on an account-by-account basis. So then you also just think of the sheer volume of people involved in your boards and commissions. You have more than 50 that you appoint. Currently, you have 40 applicants for various boards and commissions out there, that you will go through in a reasonable fashion. But there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of coming on and coming off. Sometimes people leave and don't even tell us. And also, when one email address is compromised, as much as we can try and contain the spread, there is a real risk that then the system is compromised. We really want to be cautious in this era where government is repeatedly and just constantly targeted by ransomware, to not have any weak points in our email structure. So trying to balance out the cost, the security, and the transparency, we came up with this idea where we said, we will create one central repository, a central archive email address for boards and committee members that they must copy whenever they are conducting official business. If they receive an email from a constituent, if they are emailing back and forth with a staff member, whatever, please, they would just need to, as a matter of reflex, copy this email address so it goes in there. This has the two benefits. One, it centralizes the archives. Then those are keyword searchable. It's very easy to search one email address for any sort of records request. And two, it lessens the burden on the members of the board or commission. If they are doing what they're supposed to be doing and copying that email address, then when a records request comes in, we don't have to go to them. I mean, we will still say, you know, as a matter of public policy, please make sure that you're not missing anything. But the burden on them to demonstrate that they, provided they've complied with that policy, is much more reduced. We can search our archives. We can produce the material. We have a team of dedicated people who do that already in the clerk's office and in town council's office. So it would just be less of a burden for your board and committee members. So that's the balance that we propose to strike here, and we welcome your input.
Mike.
I think Paul was ahead of me. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to provide a little more context before we dig into this. So a little background, because Chaz and I worked on this together. A town meeting member approached me with the expectation of getting guidance on filing a warrant article to town meeting for this subject. It was extremely prescriptive. And the problem that the town meeting member was trying to solve was really the cost and complexity for the public to have FOIA requests, public records requests fulfilled. And so part of the issue is who's the custodian of those records. And when you use Gmail or you use your law firm's email account, your business email account, those records, the town is not the custodian, and you have to go to the custodian, and often there's a cost associated with it. And there could be a significant cost and a time delay. And so, the original request was to give everybody, I think, a .gov account, as Chaz had mentioned, and as well as a whole bunch of other prescriptive things that were going to be very difficult to fulfill. And in consulting together, Chaz and I, with this individual, we came to this reasonable step of, instead of having everybody have a .gov account, this creative idea of using the repository, and as Chaz said, to copy. It does accomplish the objective as long as everybody does what they're supposed to do, putting the information on boards and commissions into a records retention area that we're the custodian. But, the thing is, even if you have a .gov account, if you want to get around records retention, you can get around records retention, right? There's ways to do that. And sadly it is done, I suppose. But I do think that this is a reasonable step, and I appreciate Chaz working with our CIO in order to bring this forward. I think it makes sense.
So,
Mike.
I'm gonna make a suggestion that there is this is not a bad idea, but in terms of access, if this is only presumably the requirement is only for emails or and documents that are forwarded by email. And there are certainly other documents that the public is interested in, members of the public may be interested in if they make a public records request. And there's a tendency in the IT department to be very cautious about trying to control all of the content that people are generating. And I absolutely understand that, but there is an alternative for content that's generated by volunteers. And that's to use something like Dropbox. And there are other services that will provide essentially the same thing, which is free storage. And it's possible to make documents that are placed in that storage facility publicly accessible. You can control who posts and who edits versus who reads and who downloads. And I wonder whether we could ask the IT department to take a look at just for materials generated by volunteers. I'm sure they would never agree to that for materials generated by the likes of us. But just for materials generated by volunteers, to consider using that kind of facility.
Would that be easier than this? current?
It's easier. It's not an easier than
There is-
using
there is
an email
there is a
address.
raise,
Yeah,
yeah.
it works perfectly well for an email address. But when you have somebody who has a document that they're putting on their own hard drive, whether they have cloud storage or not, it's theirs. And if there's a public records request, that document should be revealed to should be provided to whoever's making the request. And there's no mechanism for centralizing all of that.
So we have both internally, staff use OneDrive for this purpose.
Yes, I know. And OneDrive compared to Dropbox, as you know, is somewhat more complex. And of course, you have to give people email addresses.
Right. So that's not an option for external for volunteers, but
Yeah.
Civic Plus, which was what we use for boards and commissions, is an option for that.
Okay.
And I think what we can do on that front is right now we use that, if you go to a board and commission page on the web page, you can say, look at the committee files. And in the committee files is typically, here's the agenda for the meeting, here are the minutes, and some boards and committees are better at this than others. And this is where you as the select board have the opportunity to reinforce to boards that are not as good at posting their materials that they need to post their materials. But you can also create in that system an internal folder that just says, working copies or, documents, documents that are being developed that are not necessarily tied to any one meeting, but there's just a central repository. Maybe it's project-based. And again, some committees already do this. I think IT and our teams can work on ensuring that they have the training necessary and the expectation from you, the board, that this is what they need to be doing.
Okay, I'm not sufficiently familiar. I know I have used Civic Plus, but I'm not sufficiently familiar with what its capabilities are. I just, there are free cloud storage facilities that Microsoft, Apple, Google, they're all Dropbox, they're all available. And having used them for other purposes, I find them.
Yeah, and they're not really free.
Well,
they take advantage.
They're to some extent they're free, and they're probably for somebody who's going to store someone who's going to store very large amounts of material. I was actually looking on the web there's an article that I have not completely figured out here how Dropbox makes money. How does it do that? Considering that I can put stuff up there, and I belong to a couple of organizations that use it as a depository.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, there are default settings that will download way more than you want to download into the Dropbox, and that means we have to train people to change those settings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're talking about a huge.
Whatever you do is going to require
Whatever you
training.
do is
You're
gonna
absolutely
be-
right. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. If you want all of the material or as much of the material as you can possibly reasonably expect to get, and
A significant amount of generated information is done through electronic communication and attachments.
Yeah.
Right. So if there is something being shared, I had thought that we could ask key boards and commissions, those that have a material impact on, the cost of doing business in town or owning a home or, the ZBA, the planning board, the Preservation Commission, the HAB, EDAB. There's some core boards and commissions that I think, members do use their own personal accounts as opposed to a .gov, that we could have a core set. And then ask the remainder, because there are a lot, to use this archival process. Could be a happy medium, I think, between the two.
well, Chaz, the memo raises the point of you don't want to necessarily have a two-tier.
I think it's okay. It might be, but
I think you're still up to a couple dozen accounts then, though.
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant increase, even so. You're not talking about 100, but you are talking about, I would say, 20 to 30. And again, with turnover and all of that, I think if you're going to do, I think it benefits you to kind of, if you're not going to go all the way, perhaps, dial back to the one. But to Mike's point, you can use Civic Clerk to accomplish that Dropbox style function.
Yeah.
And maybe what we can do with those boards and committees, I think, again, I think ZBA already does this. The problems that we've had is for some less formal committees or from purpose-built committees, we have had staff members use Dropbox, or we've had committee members use Dropbox. The problem we have then is who owns that. Even if it's an individual staff member who has responsibility for it, sometimes we have situations where staff leave and then all of a sudden we lose the login and we email them and say, hey, what's the password for this? And they say, oh, I forget. And so having Civic Clerk serve as our central repository where we have operational control and can get into things if we need to, is a real benefit.
Just have we gotten any feedback from other boards and commissions? Was this socialized?
So I wanted to put this draft in front of you and make sure, and then what we can do is we can I didn't anticipate you voting on this tonight. I thought that hopefully we would then send this out and get more feedback once all 5 of you were okay with an initial draft.
Sorry, one last question. You might want to just talk with your counterparts at other municipalities and see what everybody has this problem.
Yes.
And maybe somebody has something really unique. Maybe not. Maybe we're all wandering around in the dark.
Yeah.
I think this tends to be a bit of a head in the sand thing. This tends to be a thing where volunteer-driven communities kind of say, yeah, you are subject to the public records law. Watch out, keep your records, don't delete your email, follow policy. And then they kind of say, not my problem. So I think we are taking a step at being more responsible and transparent here by taking, these initial steps to be proactive as custodians.
I think it's a simple and elegant solution to try. And I guess, do you need guidance from us as to whether the proposal for CCing this archive is the direction and then you'd get feedback from other boards and commissions?
With your, if that's the way you feel.
I mean, I feel, are you okay with that, Mike?
Marissa said something very sensitive let's not neglect the good for the sake of the perfect. So yeah, let's do something, but let's also take a further look at what else
That's at least 3 people.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is we'll circulate this as a draft to all the boards and commissions that you appoint. Again, to town meeting member votes point, we don't have control over town meeting advisory committee. All you can do on that front is tell them, hey, we're doing this. You can do it too. And we would be happy to help them for that purpose. But we don't have control over them.
Okay, by the way, I would like to work with you and our new Devin, Olivia, or I'm sorry,
Tiffany
Oliva.
Yes.
Because this is
She's coming next week. Great.
because this fits into the boards and commission policy and structure that Devin and I worked on. So, the whole thing should fit together.
Absolutely.
So. Okay, moving on. Boards and commissions interviews. We have an interviewee, David Brick, for the Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee. And that's you? Please come up to the podium and introduce yourself and tell us why you're interested in being on this committee. I see you've already done a huge amount of work with the committee and on behalf of or for the committee. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and what motivates you. Okay. Now up to the podium.
Oh, up at the podium.
Or if you want to sit in my chair, we'll swap.
Just to let you all know, I'll be having my eyes closed for much of this. I have a neurological issue. It will make it easier for me to communicate.
And make sure you're
Close to the mic.
yeah, your mouth is close to the mic because that's to be picked up for our Zoom audience.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, so my name is David Brick. I have lived in Brookline since 2011. I am a personal care attendant for a disabled man. And I am a spiritual companion as well. That's a weird offering that many people haven't heard of, but it's something I do. And yeah, I've been attending the committee's meetings for maybe a little over a year now. My interest in Indigenous issues developed since before that, kind of parallel with some, values of mine with regard to the environment. And I learned more and came to sort of just value more being in solidarity with Indigenous folks, and also helping with sort of healing of past harm, and increasing awareness, building relationships. Yeah, and so I, over the course of attending meetings of the committee, it, came to be that, occasionally through my various interests and involvements, including I'm a volunteer river advocate with the Charles River Watershed Association. I was able to offer ideas and connections that ended up being helpful. One of those was I encountered an opportunity for funding that I thought might be of interest to local Indigenous folks, the Massachusetts tribe. In particular, I reached out to them, and I also reached out to the chair of the committee, Felina Silver Robinson, and ended up collaborating with a few folks on the committee to apply for some funding for that. And in the process, I also ended up reaching out to the first reaching out to the Massachusetts tribe was unsuccessful, but I reached out again, and I eventually made contact with the vice president of the tribal council, and brought him, Thomas Green, into connection and relationship with the committee. And further stuff followed from that, including he came and spoke at the high school to several classes worth of social studies students. And yeah, and there's just been continued collaboration all the way to the recent, on May 5th was National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons. I mentioned that to the committee and talked with them about some ideas, and I ended up putting together a flyer with a bunch of resources for people to learn about this issue, and to take action as well. And the committee shared that flyer out through their channels. Yeah, so it's been a good working relationship. We've done good things together, and hopefully we'll continue to.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board? John?
David, thank you so much for applying for this committee. And this may seem like an obvious question, and if it was covered in your resume, I apologize. It's not a prerequisite by any means for people serving on this committee, but do you happen to have Indigenous background?
No, I do not.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah.
Any other, Paul?
I just wanted to say I'm impressed with the amount of work and activity that David has already done for the committee. Often there's a question that one of us asks is, have you ever attended one of the meetings?
This guy has attended.
This guy has attended the meetings. So first, thank you for your involvement to date. It is greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thank you also. I mean, it was quite impressive to see the, I think, 7 paragraphs of work that you've been doing.
Yeah.
With and for the committee. So give me a sense of, what thoughts you have in terms of, both the direction of the committee going forward, as well as any ideas you have that the committee can work on that it's not currently, looking at.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I mentioned in the application, of course, has already happened. The thing that I just mentioned about May 5th. Going forward, so, there's the, well, I guess just as a general principle, continuing to find ways to increase awareness. The committee is already working on memorializing certain locations with known Indigenous significance in Brookline, and so that's something that I appreciate and support. In terms of, I think relationships, as I said, important, more possibilities for people from the Massachusetts tribe and other local tribes, and Indigenous folks here who are from not local tribes to come and participate in events that are not explicitly Indigenous themed. Allows more, relationship and awareness to be built. I have thoughts about, so we have the Indigenous Peoples Day celebration in October every year. And I've had thoughts about, possibly having something within that would raise funds for local Indigenous causes, like a raffle or something like that. I haven't yet mentioned that to the committee. I don't know if it's a good idea. There could be any number of reasons why it's not. But I'm hoping to bring it to the committee in the near future to discuss. And
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we will not be appointing to this committee tonight, but we'll in the future, and we'll be in touch with you.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your application and the work that you've already been doing.
Thank you all.
Okay, next we have boards and commissions appointments. These are candidates who we've already interviewed, or in the case of the Brookline Housing Authority, that the trustees of the Housing Authority are appointing to a committee. Start with the appointment of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. Is that your baby, Paul?
Yeah, I think it is my baby, so to speak. First, you caught me off guard. I thought we were going to take the other one first, but yes,
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
no, that's
You want-
okay. I'm prepared. Yep, we issued a call for steering group members back in April, I think early April. We had advertised it widely on social media. It was prominently displayed on the town website. I think it went to 150 different individuals associated with various boards and commissions to reach out to their networks. I advertised it widely. I know others did as well. I ended up posting it on the TMMA site, which is always helpful to alert town meeting members. And we received almost 60 applications for 12 spots. So we now have 16 spots that we've, because it was very difficult to decide. A memo was shared with you today. I think the committee, the thing that impresses me about the committee is there'll be some names on there that you go, of course, that person would be on the steering committee. And there'll be names on there that you just don't recognize. And I think that's important because it does show that we have, this is not a committee of the typical, it's a committee that's representative of various perspectives and ideas and geographic locations within the community. Some folks that are younger, some folks that are older, and in between. So I think it's a very good mix of individuals. And they are being put forward to you as a slate. Kara Bruton and Jake Collins were extremely helpful in reviewing each application, doing an analysis that they developed, and making an initial recommendation with me. And we had many discussions about this, as well as there were some conversations with some members of the board as well, I think individually. And I think I'd ask that you approve the slate that's been put forward for the Comprehensive Plan Steering Group.
Good, thank you. Any questions, comments? And there are a number of people who you wouldn't have thought of for this committee because you don't know them, but also a number of people who if I were selecting, maybe I wouldn't have put on, but I defer to your judgment on that because we do need diversity of opinions and experiences and skill sets. So.
And I will add, Bernard, that the steering group is not the only opportunity. There will be a number of individuals that we will ask to help that will advocate and connect with special interest groups within the town. And that'll be an important next step to reach out and ask those individuals to join the steering group and the committee. The first kickoff meeting is the 22nd of May, so it is coming up quickly.
Yeah. We're always concerned about ensuring that different demographic groups in our town are represented on boards and commissions, for example, seniors. And I see that Betsy Pollock is one of the members or one of the people you selected, an excellent choice, who brings a wealth of knowledge, experience, and concern for the peculiar and unique issues that elderly residents face. And a number of other people that bring similar unique experiences and knowledge to the committee. So that's really good. Any further discussion?
Question, if I may.
Oh, John, I'm sorry.
I'm assuming there's some significance to the definition of this as a group, a steering group, as opposed to a committee, a
Yeah.
board, a commission. Can someone just sort of,
Yeah, so
Paul,
I can speak to that. I don't think there's any specific reason why it was called group versus steering committee, John. If you look at what the duties of the steering group are, if you could replace group and call it a committee, it's going to guide, advise the consultant and staff as the project, the 2-year project goes forward.
and bring in perspectives and ideas from the community.
Absolutely.
So isn't there another group or entity that's also working with you?
Yep. So there is a consultant that we've
Oh, the
hired.
consultant, but isn't there also, I think, an ambassadors group?
And then there is the ambassadors group. So that will be, there'll be a call for those folks next. Some of them will actually come from the applications that we've already received, but those are intended to help us reach into the community and advocate for folks and draw them into the process, where normally the committee would not have those relationships with those individuals.
but if I may just, Mike, I'm sorry, I just want to follow up on my question. But is part of the implication of group that it's not a body that requires hosting of every meeting and
No, this is
sufficient notice?
this is a public body. Our meetings will be held in public. Our deliberations will be held in public. Absolutely.
And with the usual notification.
Everything.
And the requirements,
Yep.
minutes requirements. Oh, great.
Yep,
Okay.
yep,
good.
no, absolutely. It was a public call for the steering group. It will be a public process. And the comprehensive plan is going to be the community's plan. If it's done behind curtains, it would not be the community's plan.
Yeah, I wonder if using the word group sort of implies that it's similar to working groups that we set up that are not subject to, in many cases, the open meeting law.
Well, you could make a motion to rename the group, the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. I would support that. If you'd like to do that,
I would
I'd be happy to.
like to move that.
I may have an answer. There is another group working. It's the Chestnut Hill Commercial Area Study Group. And it's similarly set up, working with the community planning and development, and maybe that's just community planning and development's terminology.
But yours is a working group. That actually is a staff working group. This
It
not
is a staff.
This is not a
So
staff.
there's
Yeah.
a distinction there. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair
So
enough.
Bernard, if you would like to move.
I would like to move that
renaming it.
we rename the group, the committee.
I second that.
Okay, any objection to that? No, okay. No, let's vote on it. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So, any other discussion, any other questions about this?
Nope.
Yeah, and the actual creation of a comprehensive plan is not by the committee, it's by the consultant.
Yeah, the consultant is going to be assembling much of the material. The guiding of the development of that material, making some decisions would certainly be input from the steering committee. And then ultimately, by statute, the planning board actually has to approve the comprehensive plan. And of course, it will come to this body as well, to the select board for approval. So it behooves us to interact with you, the planning board. We do have a member from the planning board on the committee, and stay in regular contact for check-ins and updates so that the board is brought along throughout the entire process to be able to provide feedback.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for the committee to make sure that it explains the process and what the outcome will be to the broader community in ways that maybe we don't always do that.
That is my goal. That's
Okay.
why I'm chairing the committee, and I believe I will be speaking more and educating the public what's going on than, making sure that meetings are being managed properly.
We should vote presumably on appointing these people. Yeah.
Yep. I move approval of the appointment of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee members as presented to us in an email from, who was that email?
In a memo from Paul Warren, Kara Bruton, and Jay Collins
Right.
dated May
Okay,
14th.
which I assume everyone has looked at. So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Michael Sandman,
Aye.
Paul Warren,
Aye.
David Perlman,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, next, we have another appointment to the, appoint Susan Cohen to the CPA committee as the board, Brookline Housing Authority's representative as recommended by the BHA board. Is there any need to discuss that or?
That's a great appointment.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I move approval of Susan Cohen to the CPA committee. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Michael Sandman,
Aye.
Paul Warren,
Aye.
David Perlman,
Aye.
and chair votes aye.
Took you a little while to get over Miriam.
Right.
I'm impressed he hasn't called you Miriam yet. That's
Okay. CDBG fiscal year 2025 1-year action plan. I see Luana is here.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I am back today. I was here in April 23rd, just informed you of the CDBG allotments that the CDBG Advisory Board had made. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Iwana Lindo Smith, and I'm the new Housing and Community Planning Director. We're here tonight to ask for a vote to submit an application for the CDBG funds that HUD allocates to us each year.
Well, I'm
And-
sorry, Awana. Would you just move the microphone a little closer to your mouth? You can pull it closer to the center. Or you can stand in front of it. It's Charlie on Zoom. Thanks,
I can
Awana.
move.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm here tonight to present the actual figures that we have received from HUD. We got a nice little increase. Initially, we thought it would be 1,000,003, but this year we got 1,381,330, which was a nice $75,000 increase, which was great. And I'm here to ask you to vote the advisory committee's recommendations and for our funds. These are the recommendations that we have here. The Brookline Housing Authority will be given $518,258. The Brookline Community Development Corporation, CDC, formerly BIC, they will receive $126,000. That should complete 6 bathrooms. The BHA will be having some capital improvements at the Veterans Building. And the public services, that is subject to 15% of the 1.3 that we received. So it is as follows. Brookline Housing Authority Resident Services Program will receive $48,760. The TRIPS program for Council on Aging, they'll receive $40,000. The Steps to Success Work Connections for Youths, they'll receive $48,760. Brookline Food Pantry will receive $48,760. The Brookline Center for Community Mental Health will receive $20,919. With that said, the vote that we're asking for tonight is to approve the submission of the application to HUD for this funding. And the second vote that we're asking is to authorize the chair to execute the application for assistance. I'm sorry, let me correct that. The first vote is for the board to authorize and okay the annual action plan that we do have, this has been on our website. It has been advertised as since April 2nd and for 30-day comment period. And the comment period ended in May 2nd. So that was out for everyone to see. It is also on our website. You may go there to find that. The second vote we're asking is to authorize and execute the application for the federal assistance, and that is we have to send in an application. It needs to be signed by the board or its designee. And we're also asking you to also authorize the Director of Planning and Community Development to execute environmental reviews, which that's a requirement of HUD. It has to be done. And this way we wouldn't have to come back to you to ask you to do it. So we will take the responsibility, and we're asking you to authorize that also. That's about much. One thing I want to say, I really want to thank my CDBG Advisory Board. They were very helpful in helping us to get to this point where we can come before you to say that this is the best way to spend the funds. After lots of deliberation, this is what we came up with. And I'd like to thank my staff, mostly Jake, very helpful in putting all this together for us. And that would complete my presentation. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to just say that, and first of all, Paul is our representative on the committee.
Yes.
And for a number of years, I was the select board's representative, and I know the incredible value, the value of the work that the committee does, and the money that we distribute to critical areas of support for our residents that the select board and the town cannot do or cannot provide money for, both in terms of the housing projects, providing decent, safe facilities for residents of Housing Authority and the Community Development Corporation also, as well as the public services component, which is incredibly important in providing type of support to our residents in public housing and elsewhere that addresses some of the problems that are not new but are important to have someone address when we can't. So I think that this is a great opportunity for us to use Richard Nixon's community development block grants, which is a way of getting the federal government out of providing certain services to local communities. And we're using this in ways that maybe he wouldn't approve, but are very, very valuable to us. So, anything else? See, I was around when
that was great. I love that.
Thank you, Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Little history.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments?
Nope.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. And thank you to the team for doing a great job. And of
you,
course,
Warren.
she presented just a few weeks ago on this subject, and we
Yes.
had a public hearing.
I promised you I'd have been.
Yeah,
back.
and you did a great job. And nope, Bernard, you summarized it well, and I guess I would like to see us move acceptance.
Okay, so we have 3 questions. I'm going to take them one by one just to make it easy. I move approval of the submission of the town's fiscal year 2025 CDBG annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next question, I move approval of the question of authorizing the chair or his, I guess it is his, because it's me, his designee to execute the application for federal assistance, SF 424, and other certifications required for submission of the annual action plan. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Finally, I move approval of the question of authorizing the Director of Planning and Community Development to execute environmental review and other programmatic documents required for CDBG funded projects on behalf of the town. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Most appreciated.
Okay.
Likewise.
Next, ARPA reallocations, review and possible vote on a plan to reallocate American Rescue Plan funding from projects unable or unlikely to be completed by relevant deadlines to new or existing projects able to meet such deadlines. And this is not possible, but we do have to vote, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So you, the last meeting, the board, we provided an initial slate of potential ARPA projects, that could be funded quickly and efficiently and particularly use county funds where appropriate. You provided feedback to us on staff regarding these things, and there were two key points. One was that request that all of the $1 million that was initially allocated for the Affordable Child Care program be reallocated for direct community assistance. We fulfilled that by ensuring that in the mental health services and community partnership funding that we are seeing $100,000 of that, at least $100,000 of that going to direct community assistance. And then on the other end is that looking for additional funding for the Council on Aging. There was a need to identify additional services there. We spoke to Ruth Ann Dobek, the chair and the director of the Senior Center. And we came up with the funding for the Senior Transportation Program, which currently provides free transit to seniors looking to go, for example, to medical appointments or to the senior center. That program costs around $15,000 a month to operate. Ruth Ann has really just been incredibly diligent in finding sources of money to keep that flowing, including from ARPA Round 1 and 2, including from discretionary transportation funding. And so what we would do here is use $260,000 of ARPA money to fund this through the ARPA performance period through December of 2026, which is great because beginning in January of 2027, Ruth Ann has secured a state grant that will provide funding for this program. So we are providing continuity of service and guarantees on this front. And hopefully, if the program comes in under budget and there's not as much of a need for the discretionary transportation funds, those could be reallocated because we are using the ARPA dollars for this purpose. So to do that, we did ultimately, unfortunately, need to look at moving some money around. There were projects that we had in here that were initially in the operating budget, like the ongoing human services assessment funding, substance abuse and prevention. And then there were things that were nice to have that we were looking at, but that ultimately again, it's this is how we spend this money, how the community wants it to be spent. So we took money from Procore software licenses for the building department, radio upgrades for the fire department, and a digital evidence and ID server from the police department. So those totaled around $260,000. We were able to put that towards the senior center. And on pages 3 and 4 of the memo, you can see there's a language for a vote to reallocate around $3.3 million from other sources to the list of projects indicated in the memo.
Okay, any question for the
I have two comments. First, I want to thank Chaz.
It just came this afternoon.
I want to thank Chaz for his work and hearing the feedback last week and finding some solutions to increase funding to the Council on Aging for the TRIPS program, which is really important for seniors to be able to get to appointments and other activities that they do where they're limited. And I also want to thank Mike for his advocacy for childcare. We heard it this evening during public comment from Raul Fernandez that, affordable childcare, especially for don't that are of color or financially disadvantaged, is extremely difficult within Brookline. I don't believe there's actually one daycare center that's in Brookline that's certified to be able to take vouchers. So Mike has done a lot of work in partnering with the Brookline Community Foundation and coming up with a plan to move that forward. And I just wanted to say thank you, Mike. It's a very, very important program that you're spearheading. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Hey, wait a minute, we screwed up. Wasn't the CDBG action plan supposed to be a public hearing?
Guess so.
Okay. Whoops.
You had already had a public
that's
hearing,
right.
so I.
Okay,
had the
it's in-
public
it's
hearing.
in the,
Yeah, with that said, it was noticed, so I suppose you can, if you can provide the opportunity if anyone wants to speak on the subject, and if there's an issue, you can reopen your vote.
Okay. I apologize. Oops.
What?
But,
We have to
Can we
vote on
finish
our
the ARPA first?
Okay.
and then
Vote
go
on-
back?
and then
Yeah.
we'll do that, yeah.
okay, any further discussion of the ARPA reallocation? No? Okay, I move approval to reallocate $3,356,337 $1,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding from the projects listed on pages 3 and 4 of the Town Administrator's Memorandum of May 14, 2024, in the amounts set forth therein. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, well, now let's go back. I'm glad I caught that. Let's go back to the CDBG one-year action plan, and this is a public hearing. Charlie, please tell us if there's anyone on the Zoom that would like to speak, or if anyone in the audience would like to speak, please raise their hand.
Sure, and if you're on Zoom, use the hand raise. or Q&A
Wait,
feature.
Regina, wait.
Be very
If,
brief and very
Regina, wait. Wait. Yes, Charlie, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair Green. So folks on Zoom, if you would like to make a comment at this public hearing, please use the hand raise or Q&A feature to let us know you'd like to make a comment. There are 15 attendees and no one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature right now.
Okay, Regina, I didn't use my mallet, so.
well, thank you. Very brief and very positive. The CDBG process is regional now. It has been for a number of years. We need to support the staff to be aggressive about it, to find and go out in the community and find out where these needs can be in advance of the annual appeal for the CDBG. For several years, Brookline was actually one of the main recipients, but now the other communities in the consortium, in the regional consortium, are now fighting for that money too. So I do want to give all the support in the world to the process of trying to find what we need in the community. Because without the press and without a lot of public communication, it's hard to know areas of town that could use that money that would qualify under CDBG. So thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, anyone raise their hands in the Zoom?
No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'll close the hearing, and there's no reason for us to revote our votes, so we'll move forward.
Bernard, can I just, I'm sorry to interrupt the flow, but what Charlie just said just occurs to me. We're using the webinar platform, and we agreed that we would move towards the meeting platform, and I just want to see if we can get that.
Yes,
sooner
I
than
actually,
later.
the plan on that is actually to move forward on that in the immediate aftermath of town meeting. We should be done and ready to go.
Good.
We're working with IT now on that front. So yes,
Thank you.
we are moving away.
Okay, next. Oh, the fun items on the agenda. Warrant article votes. These are
Speaking
warrant
of town
articles.
meeting.
Pardon me?
Said, speaking of town meeting,
Okay.
We have an odd definition of fun, but okay.
All right. We've already had public hearings on the 3 items up for consideration, 1 for reconsideration and 2 for a final vote. Let's start off with Special Town Meeting 2, Article 1, which is for reconsideration. And Melissa, could you explain why this is being reconsidered, the small changes that were made by, I think, Advisory Committee?
Sure, Melissa Goff, Deputy Town Administrator. So the last, we voted on this, the articles as submitted. CTOS actually took a look at the article and they had some concerns that it wasn't immediately obvious that it was just the police department that we were looking to take out of civil service. So in your packet, you have amended language where they make sure that it's very clear that that is the intent of the motion. So advisory needs to reconsider as well so that we could all be on the same page. So you'd be the first to take action on this.
Okay, any questions?
Just that this was ruled within scope, a change by
Yes.
the moderator. Okay.
It's,
Yeah,
yes,
narrow-
it's been
narrow
included in the
down.
combined
Yeah.
reports.
Okay.
Okay, I move reconsideration of warrant Article 1 of Special Town Meeting 2. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So we're reconsidering Article 1. Any questions? Okay, I move favorable action on Article 1 of the Special Town Meeting number 2 as amended by the Advisory Committee. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Melissa, you about to say something?
Yeah, it's as amended by CTOS.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Let's say.
As amended by CTOS. Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, next, Article 13. I think Roger Blood is here to talk about this article, which is an article originally presented by the Housing Advisory Board. Linda Olson-Pelkey is also in the audience, although she doesn't have to speak if there's no controversy here on the board about this article. Charlie, could you promote Roger?
Just a quick question, Bernard. Didn't we already hear did Roger already present this to us?
Yeah.
Yes, so can I just give you the update on where we are with this one?
Sure.
So this article, the board, you've had your public hearing, you had not taken a vote on this yet. I think you were waiting to hear what the advisory committee did. We now have that outcome. Linda's in the audience because the advisory committee essentially adopted her motion. And so that is also in your packet. Polly is also in attendance. She can also explain where the planning board is, which I think is slightly different from the Pelkey amendment. So that's where you are. You haven't taken a position on this one yet, though.
I don't see Roger here either.
But
though
Polly
he
is, yeah, we're promoting
Polly's
Polly.
here.
he did intend on being here.
So maybe we could hear from.
Oh, we're
Polly's
waiting
been
for Polly.
promoted. We're just waiting for her to share video.
That's right.
Polly, we can see your video. We don't see you though.
We can probably still hear her. I think she signed in through her VPN, so she probably just has to
Oh,
switch.
okay. So you just need to, yes. She might be rejoining.
Well, why don't we can take the other, well, that might take a while, so why don't we just wait?
With the other warrant article? You
Well,
must be
19 might
kidding.
take a while, but.
So just so I understand, while we have an opportunity, we're waiting for Polly. So the advisory committee voted in favor of the Pelkey version of the article. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the planning board has a tweak or a change to the Pelkey version?
I believe they are different. They're different from the Pelkey version. If you pull up your combined reports, which I can pull up in just a minute, the planning board report has their motion in there as well.
There's Polly.
Hi, good evening. Sorry about that. So Roger's not here, I take it?
I'm not seeing Roger. Yeah.
I did speak with Roger this afternoon about what his position was, and basically he feels that at this point he's going to bring up to the HAB that he would recommend that the Linda Pelkey amendment, which eliminates the owner-investor, be voted on by the HAB. So he is supportive of that. You know, he would have liked to have seen the owner-investor adopted, but he realizes that there were people you know, who had some qualms about that, and he really wants this to go through, and so he's happy to, you know, compromise with the Linda Pelkey amendment and to have the HAB go forward with that amendment. as for the planning board, they actually met, way before a lot of these meetings took place, but they, just by a vote of 3-2, voted to keep the owner investor, in the article, but they really, as you were pretty much evenly divided on whether it should stay or not. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well,
I just want to be clear, Polly. So the planning board kept the investor ADU in the article.
They did, but keep in mind that it was before obviously before the advisory committee's vote and,
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
yeah.
so what's the desire of the board?
May I ask a Polly a question? Polly, I'm sorry, I don't think I heard you say, what was the actual vote of the planning board?
3-2.
3-2, okay.
Yes.
Mike?
So I'll volunteer to say that I think that Linda's amendment is appropriate. I think that the argument that we can predict what an investor is going to do is perhaps mistaken. And we just don't know whether we'll set up a target for people from outside to invest in and essentially turn one-family homes into two-family homes and then try to resell them. So I would much prefer to use the language that the advisory committee has offered.
Okay, anyone object to that?
I agree.
David?
I agree.
You're the new guy on the board.
I agree with Mike and Paul.
Okay. Then I move approval of warrant article 13 as amended by the advisory committee. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, now, so you can leave, Linda, unless you want to stay around for our next discussion, which should be very interesting.
More challenging. More challenging.
Pardon me?
More challenging.
More challenging, right. Okay, so next, warrant article 19.
Yes, so the board has had their public hearing on Article 19. There have been a series of amendments that are now being classified as substitute motions that will be in front of town meeting. In addition, the petitioners have a revised motion. All of those are included in the combined reports. We also pulled into your packet. I thought the advisory committee did a phenomenal job with their public hearing and really kind of discussion of the article. But ultimately, they decided not to make a recommendation. So that's kind of where we are with Article 19.
Yeah, I agree. Their report was a model for the type of reports that should be written for issues like this. So here's how I want to work or do this.
Can I make one point before you
Okay.
worry about how you do it? The one thing that was not in our packet was the bank of motion to refer. So there was substitute motions, which are amendments to the original article, but did we get Dick Banka's motion?
That's in there.
Okay, and his motion to
came
refer,
separately.
okay, it did come in late,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Okay, Article 19, the ceasefire resolution. I want to start this discussion of our vote on Article 19 by listening to the thinking of each of you on the select board. But I'm going to exercise the privilege of the chair, and you elected me chair, so I have that privilege to start. So, this is a difficult article to discuss for a variety of reasons. At our March 12th hearing, the majority of the select board thought that a discussion of warrant article 19 at town meeting would be, use various words, but divisive, basically. A minority of the board argued that the discussion of warrant article 19 can and should be held at town meeting. And that was me and John Van Scoyac, if I'm correct, right?
Yep.
My view is that the petitioners of the warrant article asked for a discussion of important issues that are relevant to the town of Brookline. They're relevant because all of Brookline has been traumatized by the terrorist attack on October 7 and the subsequent events in Gaza. That trauma is shared by residents who are Israeli and who are Palestinian here in Brookline, who are Jewish and who are Muslim, and by residents who are not in any of those groups. It is also relevant because that trauma has caused an outbreak of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred in Brookline that we have to deal with. It has also unleashed raw emotions that have caused otherwise, and use my words carefully, otherwise good people to say things about the people in the conflict, the issues of this conflict, and even about their neighbors with whom they may disagree, that use angry and hot button language that is hurtful and undermines community. In response to Warrant Article 19, various amendments have been proposed to replace the language of the article. Select Board members can move those amendments if they desire, but I am focusing on the original Warrant Article 19. In my opinion, except for the Mark Levy amendment, the amendments attempt to ignore the subject of Warrant Article 19, which is primarily a call for a ceasefire in the Gaza war, humanitarian aid, and the return of the hostages held by Hamas. This will be a difficult discussion because of the emotions on all sides, and there are only a few aspects of this situation that really lend themselves to having a clearly right answer. I hope people accept that both the warrant article and the amendments were presented in good faith. But pretending that we can suppress or ignore or silence discussion or refuse to engage in difficult conversations with our neighbors, in my opinion, is counterproductive and potentially dangerous. The problem, however, is how to structure a respectful, grown-up conversation in a way that gives all reasonable sides a hearing and encourages all sides to understand the positions of the other sides without having to agree with those positions. I believe that we in Brookline are mature enough to have such a conversation. We had one during our hearing on Warrant Article 19 in March. And I think we can have such a conversation at town meeting, or again at the select board if town meeting refers this article to the select board as suggested by Dick Binka. The options that the select board has today, this evening, are one, to recommend favorable action to town meeting, which is a recommendation that Warrant Article 19 or an amendment that gets a majority vote of the select board be favorably voted. Two, to recommend no action, which is a recommendation that Warrant Article 19, as it may be amended, be voted down. Or three, no recommendation, which is the position taken by the advisory committee and would be a recommendation that town meeting have the discussion without the guidance of the select board. So I guess the latter is where I'm inclined to what I'm inclined to support, but I'm wondering what other select board members think. As I said, I'd like to just air all the views of the select board before we proceed to vote on whatever it is we're going to vote on. So anyone want to volunteer? Mike?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that I've met with the petitioners a couple of times and exchanged several emails with them, and from the first encouraged them to preferably to withdraw the article, which they declined to do, or to make significant changes, especially in the whereas clauses, and they most certainly did that. They made some very significant changes, and I hope that when we get to town meeting members will take the amendment that they've offered, and that we will take the amendment that they've offered as representing their views, and not look at the article and look at Article 19 based on the original text. The petitioners and their supporters include Jews, they include Muslims, and they are all people of goodwill. And the one thing that I regret about the hearing that we had was that there were a couple of speakers who challenged that perspective. The petitioners want a ceasefire and a simultaneous release of hostages. Some have said that we have a moral obligation to call for a ceasefire. Mark Levy has based his appeal largely on that. And others have said that a ceasefire before Hamas has been somehow eliminated means that Hamas will be the winner. And I think we need to be clear when we give our report to town meeting that there's no possible winner in this war. Deciding how to vote on this is emotionally charged. It's a complex warrant article. It's a matter for each person to decide for themselves, and I believe that we should not try to give them guidance, apart from urging people to respect each other's views and not disparage them. But it's very clear that we are going to have this debate at town meeting, and so that's the bit of guidance that I would like to provide.
Thank you. Any other? Are you raising your hand, Chaz?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, no.
Just stretching it.
That'll be a first.
Okay, John.
A couple of questions first. Bernard, if you don't, Mr. Chair, would you just, the last part of what you said, I think is kind of where I'm coming from, but I want to be sure I understood the nuances of it. So by not taking a position,
Or no recommendation.
no recommendation. But we're not precluding the possibility that select board members might express themselves individually on this.
Of course. Yeah.
We're just saying that we don't feel that it is necessary for the board, as a board, to attempt to steer town meeting towards one particular result or another result. Because that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. And, I'll be frank, I haven't made up my mind yet on this because feelings do run so strongly in the community. And there's so much, yes, there's nothing at stake in terms of whether we pass this or that resolution. Is it going to result in an immediate change in, the facts on the ground in Israel and Gaza? No. Is it going to be heard, where they are conducting negotiations right now, towards trying to find some kind of a ceasefire that both sides can agree to? Probably not. But we all share this community, and we all kind of hope to learn from one another. And I think that's why I felt from the beginning that yes, town meeting should take this up. And it has spawned many a discussion, and it has spawned several alternative proposals. And all of that is good. It's how we grapple with very difficult questions of both not only strategy, international balances of power and international standing of states vis-a-vis each other. But it's how we grapple with our concern for our neighbors as to how a terrible war in another part of the world is impacting them, and impacting some of them in one way and impacting others of them in a very different way. And here we are, as the leadership board of the town, trying to help people of all views to come to grips with, is there a common view that we can take on this? So more than anything else, I have been guided by, what is the thing that most people, including some from side A and some from side B, could actually come to agreement on as a step forward, as a positive step. So far, I will be quite upfront about this. Mark Levy's amendment comes the closest, and there are several aspects of it that I admire. I'll put it that way. I admire the phrase, the United States has a humanitarian duty, as well as a diplomatic need to provide leadership. I think that's a key phrase. I think the final paragraph of Mark's explanation kind of speaks to me, and I'll just read it back. I believe passing Article 19's call to action is worthwhile and well within town meeting's long-held tradition of speaking out for peace. Town meeting's long tradition of speaking out for peace and international cooperation. But Mark has tried to focus his amendment, not the original Article 19 proposal, this is Mark's proposal, on the urgent need to stop the fighting and to relieve the suffering that the war inflicts daily. It's a ambitious hope that that can happen. And it's an even more ambitious hope that it would happen to any degree, because the town meeting of Brookline adopted a resolution. But that's the hope we should be clinging to. And I thought Mark expressed it very well. And so right now I'm kind of drawn towards Mark's proposal on this. That's where I'm coming from. But I agree with our chair that we as individual select board members are free to express our views on this if we think it would be helpful to express our views, but it wouldn't serve a purpose, nor would it be appropriate, given the gravity of the issues under consideration here, for us to attempt to use our collective vote as a board to push town meeting in one direction or another.
Well,
Thank you. So, I guess first I would say I am of the opinion that we should take a position. We are the chief executive of the town. And certainly we should be providing an opinion on a very, very, very controversial article that's been brought before town meeting. So I would like us to take a vote and not offer we should offer an opinion. I've mentioned before, my adult children are of Arab descent and my grandchildren are Jewish. I am absolutely torn by this. The levy amendment has all the attributes that John mentioned. It is very, very offensive to my Jewish friends and neighbors and family members. And I have great fear for what's going on with the war and what's happening. But the debate at town meeting is going to happen, barring someone making a motion to table. I don't suspect we're not going to do that. And I suspect it would require a 2/3 vote. So there is going to be a debate at town meeting. We will have the conversation. Actually, it won't be a conversation. It's going to be people talking at each other. It will not be a discussion. It will not be productive. It'll be very much in keeping with what has happened here in this hearing room and what happened at advisory. I don't believe any good can come from it. That's why I voted back in December with my colleagues, at least a majority of the board, to not hold a special town meeting because of this exact situation. I do not believe that we should be, as a town, weighing in on this. I believe we've got many, 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 many other issues that we should be dealing with. And a resolution passed by town meeting isn't going to make one single change many, many miles away, but it is going to create harm, emotional harm to people within Brookline. There will be people harmed by a vote at town meeting, but a vote's going to happen. My preference is to vote in favor of the Banker motion, which is a motion to refer back to the select board with no action required. It has the attributes of providing for town meeting to talk at each other for however long we're going to talk at each other. People can hear opinions, and then it can be referred without having to vote on any specific version of Article 19. If that were to not pass, I personally, and I would recommend that we vote no action on all versions of Article 19. There is not a version, in my view, that is going to be beneficial to Brookline. It will create harm. I think about the many incidents that have already occurred in Brookline. The graffiti. There was just recently graffiti in a high school bathroom that was not widely reported. In our schools, we've had multiple incidents publicly. Anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim. There's been vandalism. This is a direct result of this very, very, very divisive topic. And I think there's a better way to do it. I don't think passing a resolution at town meeting is going to make one difference. So I'm in favor of the Banker motion to refer. And if that if that doesn't pass, I'm in favor of no action across the board.
The bank of motion is not before us. I mean, that's sort of a procedural motion. for
It's not a,
town meeting.
no, it's actually a filed motion. It's not a procedural motion. He has filed a motion with the moderator, and the town. It's an actual motion. It's not procedural. His motion will be voted on first, actually, because it's a referral motion. So we should have an
By
opinion.
town meeting, yeah.
No, he filed a motion. A motion is a motion.
It's not an amendment, though.
It's not an amendment,
But
but we could vote to support the motion to refer.
we could, that's a separate topic. We could do that.
That's my point.
David?
So I agree with Paul that as the chief executive body of the town, we should be opining on every warrant article, without exception. And so I do think we should take an opinion. I agree with you, Bernard, that I think that philosophically we should be respectful anytime a petitioner brings forward a proposal. So if somebody wants to have a debate on something, we shouldn't be shutting down democracy. We should give them that opportunity. In terms of where I think the right landing spot is, I feel that there is an amendment that doesn't look to try to pick a winner. It's fairly neutral sounding, and that would be the Burstein-Gladstone amendment, which essentially says, let's support our federal government in achieving a lasting peace. And it doesn't get into specifics as to how that's done. So I think that is the least painful for all involved because it's not picking sides, it's not picking winners or losers. And I think that would be the amendment that I would support.
Any further discussion? I guess, my concern is that it's not the that article that is creating the harm here in Brookline. It's the events in the world. And we will exacerbate that harm by trying to stifle discussion.
Well, Bernard, no one's proposing stifling discussion. At this table, not a single person has said we're going to stifle discussion. The discussion and debate will happen at town meeting. We're not suggesting that there be a tabling. If someone makes a motion to table in 2/3, there would actually be no debate. No one at this table is suggesting a tabling. The debate will happen at town meeting. The question is, after that debate, what is our recommendation to town meeting to do after that debate? I believe that we should have a position. David just said that he prefers the Gladstone amendment. John prefers levy. I don't know where Mike is.
And I prefer that we make no recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
that's where.
And my when I said, stifling conversation, I wasn't suggesting that this board was stifling conversation, but that there is a feeling in town that because this can be divisive, that we should not talk about it. And that's what I'm, suggesting we not do.
Okay. We are talking.
John?
Yeah, Paul characterized my position, and I understand why you did. I just want to be sure people understand. What I did say was the one that comes closest right now, but I'm still doing a lot of thinking about it. Excuse me, I should be speaking into the microphone. The levy amendment is the one that comes closest right now to expressing how I feel about this issue. But I think like a lot of people in Brookline, this isn't the kind of issue we easily make up our minds on and then decide, I'm not going to change my mind. This situation is changing by the day. There could be a ceasefire agreed to by the time we get to town meeting. So I think we all need to stay open-minded as much as possible, but at the same time, not shirk having an honest discussion with one another and being unafraid to express our views, even if those views are repugnant to some people. Maybe that's going to happen. I hope not. I don't think anything I have seen in the proposals that have been offered should be repugnant to anybody. They are sincere efforts to find a way out of a situation which is having horrible, horrible consequences for many, many people, Israelis and Gazans alike. That's why I think we need to continue to have these discussions and hopefully find some kind of consensus view among town meeting members. And as I said before, I just don't think the board has to play a role of pushing town meeting towards one consensus view or another consensus view, but simply to offer our thoughts and then let those thoughts be part of the mix of views that will be debated and discussed at town meeting.
Isn't that the same as making no recommendation?
I thought that was what he's proposing.
That, I said I agreed with
Okay.
our
Bernard.
chair, Bernard, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Seems like a long way to it, but thank you.
Okay,
Well, that's
really, but
my, that's my,
where are you coming down?
well, that I was about to say,
Yeah.
I thought I had made myself clear, but apparently not. My view is also that we should not make a recommendation.
Okay, so we
Okay.
agree.
So then I move that the select board make no recommendation to town meeting on warrant article 19. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Michael Sandman,
Aye.
Paul Warren,
No.
David Perlman.
No.
Okay, so we're not gonna make a recommendation.
You do have to vote.
You have to vote. You have not voted yet, Bernard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you
Chair
go.
votes aye.
Very late.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, well, that's the end of the meeting.
Uh,
Unless anyone has anything they'd like to say or like to speak at public comment at the end of the meeting. Okay, Regina.
We do
Charlie, is
have
there
a
anyone
hand
on the
raised-
Zoom?
We
that-
do have a
Gina
hand
Kelly
raised in the
from
audience.
Southbrook.
Pardon me?
Sorry.
We do have a hand raised in the Zoom audience.
Okay, so let's hear from Regina first and then.
Yeah,
person
just
in-
real briefly, I want to really praise town meeting member and advisory committee member Linda Pelkey. As someone who knows how difficult it is to submit any kind of warrant article, let alone one that's so popularly demographically supported by newcomers who think it's the easy answer to problems. She took a lot of heat and she's put a tremendous amount of effort in it. And I have to praise her and thank her for her efforts. My precinct in particular is happy about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, please.
We have
promote-
one hand raised in the audience. It's Mark Levy. So I'm going to promote Mark now.
I see in the audience is Roger Blood. We've already handled that issue.
You can go home now.
Mark, you've
Yeah.
been promoted to a panelist. If you'd like to make a public comment, you'll have 3 minutes, and your time will begin.
Hi, thank you very much for listening to me and recognizing my hand raised. I hope you read the fingerprints because that's the only way you could recognize it, I suppose. But seriously, I think the most important thing about this warrant article, when you boil it all down, it's that there are people suffering. There are people dying. Not just adults, but children. And I don't know how to solve the long-range problem of Palestinians versus Israelis. I don't know whether there's going to be any possibility of having some agreement come out of the process. I don't know if the ceasefire will include the return of the hostages. All I know is that you can't look at this kind of disaster, especially in a town like Brookline, which has so many people invested in one or the other participants in the war, and say nothing. It seems to me that basic morality calls for that. And what I've done in my amendment was try to be as neutral as possible and focus on the catastrophe that's happening and try to urge our congressional delegates and the president to do their best to save people's lives. And I don't think that's a controversial thing to do most of the time. And I hope it can be accepted in that sort of way. And I also hope that the redone amendment that was that was put forward by the petitioners, the revision, not the original one, can have some of the same effect, and Tammy will pick one or the other. And all I'm going to say is all that's required for evil to flourish is for good people to do nothing. I want to do something. And I think Brookline has a tradition of wanting to do something.
You have 30 seconds. Oh, is that it? Okay. Thanks, Mark. Chair Green, I don't see anyone else raising their hand looking to speak at the end of meeting public comment.
Okay, thank you. With that, our meeting is